The panel shows a fierce warrior with a sword in front of a monster. The caption says that he was known as Aiden, who saved the world from the demon lord and the one who dyed half the world with blood, namely the dragon's slayer Alberio. The word "but" is written on the picture. Aiden rushes into battle without a sword, shouting "traitor." It is explained that as soon as the demon lord died, a curse was placed on him. Several heroes stand nearby. One states that he knew it from the beginning. Alberio lies on the ground, half of his body turned to darkness. The guy in front of him says that those who want to destroy sin will become it themselves because this is a legend passed down by the imperial court. The stranger leans towards Alberio and states that he had no choice because the demon lord is a hereditary being and whoever kills him will become the new lord, and so on. He smirks and claims that if you kill him, you will become him yourself, and most likely it is good because Alberio must sacrifice himself for the country. The armored fighter standing next to the girl declares that he will not apologize since he had no other choice. Alberio is furious, thinking that he will not even ask for forgiveness. The girl with the staff smiles and wishes to rest in peace, activating the great magic seal. A bright blue light shines on Alberio's face. He sees the guy in armor and realizes that they were his friends. The girl with the blindfold silently watches while he is sure that they were comrades. The red-haired heroine with the staff smirks. Alberio thought that they were his colleagues. The blonde guy smiles while he declares that it was all a lie. Alberio sinks to the bottom of the sea and realizes that it is better to die than to remain here forever. His body is half radiating darkness. He is in pitch darkness in an endless downward spiral. He thought it was an endless fall. Aiden reflects on everyone. He calmly declares his desire to destroy them. The guys next to the bed loudly exclaim that Alberio has finally woken up, calling him master. His lips are dry. He does not understand where he is. A woman with tears in her eyes stands next to the man, and they are very happy that he woke up. Alberio is shocked, thinking about addressing him as a son. He gets up from the bed looking at everyone and asks who they are. The woman says that he slept for 2 days and is probably at a loss. She hugs him and declares that she is his mother. He is shocked to hear Aiden addressing him, not Alberio. He clutches his head and realizes that he would rather die in the void. His mother anxiously exclaims if everything is okay with him. Darkness forms around Alberio. He is shocked and does not understand what kind of memories these are. The picture shows Aiden growing up and he understands that these are memories of a man named Aiden, and now it is the year 450 according to the imperial calendar, and this is 15 years before his death. The guy is pierced by a bright light. The inscription says that in the void on the border between worlds he was sure that he died, and before he could become the Lord of Demons he was forced to commit suicide. He furiously declares that he will find everyone and kill one by one. Aiden looks around in anger at the people in the room. The picture shows the guy's hooliganism. Aiden does not understand why he ended up in the body of such a person. He remembers that he was lying in the rain and was drunk, but it is unclear why he lay there for 2 days. He looks at the huge window with a grin and realizes that if he were not the son of a duke, he would have already been beaten to death. Aiden, lost in thought, looks in the mirror and says that this is terrible. He looks at the reflection in which the hair color and look are different, and wonders if he really is Alberio, or maybe he just dreamed about it all his life. The guy is surprised to realize that he needs to test his powers. He orders the system to open. A window pops up with characteristics: first name, person, and inaccessible tabs in the form of a reaper of battle mages, the king of mercenaries, the sworn enemy of Talos. It is explained that inaccessible titles will be opened sequentially as you gain qualification. Aiden realizes that the system is the power that you get by eating the heart of a berserker, along with his title, which must be a dragon slayer, and it is still here, and in the end, this is not a dream. Aiden is worried that his name is broken. He stands in front of the mirror and wonders if it matters. He realizes with a mad look that this must be a gift from the gods and now he just needs to find them. The guy turns to the butler and says that he will need to tear them apart. The green-haired hero says with fear in his voice that he brought him something to drink. Aiden kindly takes the cup and thanks the frightened butler. He is horrified that he said thank you. He sees the fierce face of Aiden who says thank you to every question and appeal. Aiden looks out the window with a cup and thinks about something. The butler watches him in shock and wonders if he liked it, and if this fool really thanked him. Aiden looks serenely into the distance. He turns around and asks if the butler wants to tell him something. Another servant asks him how he got out alive. He tells about the gratitude from the owner while the interlocutor does not believe it at all. Aiden with a cup in his hands does not believe what is happening, declaring that this is madness, and he has lost the power of speech. Another version is depicted against his background, and he realizes that he has returned 15 years into the past, and does not understand what happened to his past self. Then he thinks about what exists in the present time separately from him. Aiden turns to Philip, realizing that by now he should have gained independence from Master Valken, the former mercenary king, and he should find out. Philip turns around in shock and realizes that he never called him that. Aiden smirks and wants to ask him one question. He starts shaking. Aiden asks if the guy is okay with a crazy look. The other butler puts his hand on Philip's shoulder and thanks him for everything, stating that he will remember. Aiden smiles while the green-haired one cries and asks what is wrong with him today. Philip stands in front of him and talks about the mercenary king. Aiden asks what he knows about the mercenary king's apprentice. Realizing that he was one at the time, the guy states that there were rumors that the mercenary king disappeared some time ago. Philip turns to his master with sadness. Aiden is shocked to hear that he has never heard of him having apprentices, while Aiden does not understand what he is doing at this time. The panel shows the silhouette of the previous version of Aiden, who does not understand what he is doing now. A man in a cloak walks through the slums. He sees a boy and thinks if he should try this guy today. Aiden bumps into him with his shoulder. The boy walks on. He looks into a bag of gold and declares that this is a jackpot. The inscription tells about the childhood of Aiden. The same man in a cloak stands behind the guy. The man with a smirk asks the frightened boy if he has enough courage. The king of mercenaries, Valken, asks how dare he even think about stealing his money. He puts his hand on his shoulder. The boy asks for forgiveness with fear. Valken declares that he has a pretty strong body and from now on he is his student. The master drags him along and shouts that he will teach him to be a better mercenary. The boy asks him to wait. The inscription says that this is how he met Valken. Alberio in the previous version flies at the enemy, explaining that since then he became famous as his disciple, and later after killing the mad dragon they began to call him the king of dragon slayers. But there is one but Philip with a tray in his hand addresses the young master, stating that he has never heard that the king of mercenaries has disciples. Aiden is shocked to realize that he does not exist here. The events unfold in the daytime. The billers discuss how the young master has changed recently, and even when Philip spilled wine nothing was thrown at him. The guy tells him that he was even thanked. The other replies that he suddenly began to be called by name in a friendly manner. Aiden looks into the distance. While they believe that people change after a serious illness, it seems to be true. Aiden watches. At this moment, they consider him sluggish, and his eyes seem empty. Frowning, the guy realizes that he really has nothing to do. He holds a flower in his hands and realizes that his food is prepared. He does not need to clean up. And in his free time, he searched for Alberio. But as expected, it does not exist. He remembers the traitors and wonders how it is, and what about the grudge, and how revenge should be done in this case. Aiden looks ahead in surprise. Knights are training with wooden swords. Aiden watches and realizes that there are many knights in the duchy. A man approaches him and asks why he is here. In front of him stands Carl, Aiden's younger brother. He looks at him seriously while explaining that unlike the previous owner of this body, who was a scoundrel, Carl is diligent and has already become a knight. Despite the fact that he is the second son and even has the right to inherit the throne. But there is a problem. The younger brother angrily asks why he doesn't drink like he usually does. An enraged Carl looks at Aiden, saying that he thought he was pathetic. Seeing him play and drink, and judging by his face, he feels superior to him. Aiden, hanging his head, says that he was just bored. Carl states that night training is not a spectacle, and if he is not here to train then he should leave. Aiden looks into the distance, and realizes that now that he thinks about training, he remembered that he has not picked up a sword since then. Aiden frantically says well. Aiden asks again in shock. He turns around and says that he will train. The events unfold on the training ground. The fighter kneels in front of Aiden and introduces himself as the apprentice knight of Bazan, greeting the young master. He says well with a serious expression. The others discuss that the knight will deliberately lose so as not to be fired. The fighter realizes with fear that this is bad because he will have to fight a young burr. He remembers how Philip dragged Aiden away from the mongrels and does not understand how one can lose to the neighbor's dogs. Bazan holds his sword and Aiden realizes that his opponent clearly intends to lose on purpose. Aiden wants to warm up and tease him a little, giving it his all. They stand opposite each other with swords. Aiden asks him not to lose to him on purpose and to do everything in his power because a knight's apprentice who loses to a weakling is practically useless. He tells his surprised partner with a grin that he will have to expel him from the order in case of defeat. The guy watches this and realizes that the boar has completely gone crazy because he has never held a sword in his hands and now he wants to seriously fight the squire. Bazan calmly looks at the enemy and intends to start the fight. He disappears from his place in an instant. They begin the fight, striking with swords. Aiden notices that it hurts because this body is much weaker than he thought. Aiden smirks and wants more blows. Bazan strikes his opponent with a series of blows. The spectators are shocked, not understanding what he is doing, going against the young master because he can hurt him. The fighter fights furiously. The spectators look in shock and do not believe. Aiden holds the sword with both hands until they understand how he survived. Carl cannot believe how his brother is fighting. Zahn is shocked and wonders why the enemy does not fall. Aiden confidently stands in front of him. While he was sure that the opponent did not have a single chance, not understanding why the sword did not reach him. A new wave of attacks occurs. Aiden thinks during the fight that this refreshes him. Their swords ring out against each other. Aiden attacks, noticing that his blood is boiling. Bazan looks enraged. Aiden fights with a grin, declaring that he hasn't felt such joy in a long time. The audience is shocked that Zan is being pushed aside. Carl can't believe that the brute is beating the squire. After all, the weakling was bitten by the neighbor's dogs. The opponent notices that his swordsmanship has changed. Aiden strikes again while the squire realizes that he has been holding back all this time. A frightened Bazan wonders how he can even wield a sword like that. Aiden maintains a fighting stance, thinking that he forgot that he lived a lazy life for so long despite his weak body and lack of muscles. Aiden stands in front of his former self and declares that he is Albriel, the dragon slayer king who killed the crazy monster. Aiden calmly performs another attack. He holds his sword confidently. He points the tip of the wooden weapon at the opponent. Aiden asks him with a smirk if he is going to give up. The audience looks at Aiden and does not believe that Bazan lost to him. The boy tells his younger brother that the sparring was refreshing, who in turn pretends to be happy to hear it. He waves his hand at them and states that he will come by more often and Aiden will want to measure his strength again. They look at him in shock and do not understand if this is really the young master they knew. Aiden sits on the bed and does not believe that this body could not withstand even one duel. He smiles. The boy lies down on it and states that he was able to vent his frustration and this is also a new opportunity. He looks at the ceiling and realizes that the heavens have given him another chance in life to take revenge. He imagines a warrior in armor and realizes that these guys are so talented that they can be called an army of one man. Given their high status, it will not be easy. Calling the Night King and the heir to the Grand Duchy of Sires. A blindfolded girl appears in the panel who is an iron-blooded saint chosen by the slaughter cult of Spica. In the picture, the great magician Shora stands with his hand outstretched. In the panel, the second commander-in-chief of the Empire of Immortals and the great alchemist Calcis sits on the throne. Aiden thinks that now he has no chance against them and perhaps he will have to fight alone. The picture shows a villain in a cloak against the background of the dead. Aiden realizes that for revenge he must destroy them before they join forces because as soon as they unite the country will be bad and he must do all this before the coalition to conquer the dark magicians is created in 5 years. Aiden lies in bed realizing that he needs to pump up his body first because in this state he will not be able to defeat even one goblin not to mention these guys and so he came up with a way to help cope with the task. Philip looks at the paper in shock asking if the gentleman really wants to buy this. Philip states that Aiden has been quiet, wondering what he is going to do this time. Aiden is surprised and asks what is wrong with what he asked for. Philip reads it and says that even if he buys the highest quality holy potions, they are quite expensive ingredients. The butler is shocked, imagining the herb from troll excremental grass, the hell flower, the flower of despair. Lunacy blooms and realizes that they are all poisonous plants. Aiden stands in front of him and thinks that even if he explains why he needs this, they will still doubt it and nothing can be done about it. He grabbed his shoulder thinking that the owner of this body must have done something like this before. Aiden with a mad grin states that knowing what all this is for is quite dangerous. He tells the scared butler that he will play with him if he tells, and even imagining is already fun. Philip hears him ask in fear if it was really boring because he was quiet all these days, offering to remember the good old days. The butler ran away in an instant, shouting that he has no objections and will definitely buy everything now. Aiden understands with a smile that he must use everything he can in this life, and although in his past life he would not have thought about such things. But now he is the son of a duke who throws money around, and this is a completely different matter. In the panel of Aiden with his past version, he realizes that he has already experienced a body that has overcome mortal limits as a sword master, and therefore he can reach this level faster than anyone else. In the panel of his house, Aiden realizes that the method is far from normal. The events unfold 1.5 months later. The picture shows a training bag. Aiden with an athletic build stands with a wooden sword in his hands. He turns and demands a mana potion from Philip. Philip hands the young master the potion. He drinks a blue liquid. There are a lot of such potions in the panel. Aiden brings his body to the limit with training and then recovers using the method of breaking and then healing. He holds an empty jar against a background of gold and realizes that one potion costs about the same as a month of a commoner's life. But the fact that he is the son of a duke makes this method possible. He also has a secret weapon. Aiden asks Philip what the things he asked for are. Philip replies that he delivered them to his room while thinking that he wants to ask what the ingredients are for. Philip remembers that terrible conversation with a proposal to remember the good times and realizes that he is not interested. Aiden looks at the things and notices that the assistant really bought all the poisonous plants. He holds them in his hands and does not believe that he will use this method. Aiden angrily remembers the theory created by Calcis and Shora. He sees a red flower and reflects that while the poison wreaks havoc, the body uses everything it can to desperately survive, unlocking its potential. He holds up a yellow bottle and states that he could die. But he bought a high-quality holy potion and everything will probably be fine. He puts it in his mouth and says that he defeated death once. He chews on the flower in anger. The empty bottle falls to the floor. Aiden covers his mouth with his hand. He kneels down. Aiden notes that this is very painful and he will have to do this 100 more times. He looks at the blue glow and realizes that the flow of mana has become smoother, as he expected. A question appears on a red background in the panel. Is it fun? The Dragon Slayer King. Aiden is shocked to hear this voice. He turns around and furiously asks where the stranger is and why he is here, demanding to show himself. Aiden understands that he will never be able to forget this voice, even if he wants to. Philip opens the door and asks the young master what happened. Philip asks his question again. Aiden calmly demands to leave. The assistant says in fear that there was a loud noise. Aiden angrily demands to leave. The butler understands everything with fear in his eyes and closes the door. Aiden with a serious look is sure that this was not a hallucination. A huge monster appears in the panel. Aiden asks if it is the Underlord. He clenches his fists and understands that the enemy knows his real name, while wondering why he is here. Frightened Aiden hears that the monster probably scared him, and they have not seen each other for a long time. King of Dragons Slayer Aiden Alberio. Aiden frowns and thinks about the ruler. He screams furiously asking why he is here because he definitely saw his death with his own eyes. Aiden looks around and hears that he must have missed him, and the monster is sorry that he does not have a physical body so he cannot look at the villain. Aiden sighs and wonders how he talks to him if he lost his body. In the panel, Alberio screams furiously while an inner voice states that Aiden died when he became an Underlord. Aiden is shocked to hear this. He clenches his fist and asks what he means. Aiden casts a shadow of the monster, and he realizes that he became an Underlord. The picture shows various drawings. The inner voice says that this is half true because at the moment of his death, he transferred his soul to a new body and originally planned to take over its flesh and resurrect himself. Aiden with a smirk suggests that his suicide failed the whole plan. He thinks about it and wonders if his soul exists in him. He age Aiden. Aiden ponders how to kill the soul. The monster exclaims in response. He plans to pour the holy power into his soul, or the only way is to die together. An inner voice asks him to listen to it, and states that the Dragon Slayer King is not the same as he was in the past. The guy asks what he is then because in the end, the monster is still a creature that loves madness and chaos. The panel shows the transformation. The inner voice explains that the madness and chaos he witnessed was not originally his but caused by the connection with the demon god, and this connection was severed when Aiden was trapped in the void. Aiden is shown in front of the sinister monster, and realizes that this explains why he looked calmer than the lord he saw back then, because back then he was a crazy psycho who could not hold a normal conversation. The monster states that it can still hear him. Aiden says that this is the first time he heard about the demon god. The image shows a hand controlling the monster. The voice explains that the demon god is also known as the original sin, a being of pure evil that even the gods fear, and in the past he was a cursed being that carried out the will. Aiden stands in the middle of the room and asks for one last question. Was this situation part of his plan? The monster asks what exactly. He stands with a serious look and talks about traveling 15 years back in time to take over the body. Asking if this was his work, the monster states that it can be said that way. The surprised Aiden exclaims that it is impossible. Hearing about how he entered his body, tried to use the dragon mana he possessed to turn back time. A huge dragon is drawn in the panel. It is explained that they are created as agents of the gods who can interfere with the laws of the world using the power of their dragon mana. And this is not such an impossible task. Aiden raises a finger and wonders why the demon didn't use her to escape the void instead of turning back time. Against the night sky, the monster states that it feels tired and wants to rest. Aiden demands that he not leave. Another month has passed. The action takes place in Remes's estate. No one has spoken to him since then. He slides his boot along the ground, thinking about how uneasy he was from this presence. A wooden sword cuts through the air. Aiden cuts the training bag in half. He calmly looks forward, pleased that someone remembered his past. Aiden stands with his sword in hand, stating that this training method is definitely effective. He wipes his face and realizes that the scarecrow will not be enough anymore. The guy raises his head questioningly. That while the boy was training with poisons, he realized something. He holds up the bottle and asks if he really wants Aiden to drink the whole potion. The monster states that no one is better suited to be a hero than him. The inscription says that the holy power in the potion hurts the demon because he is the source of evil. Aiden smirks and asks him to be careful. The boy looks in front of him and thinks about the fighter. Aiden with the sword calmly hits the scarecrow. Aiden says that his face seems familiar to him. The man loudly demands that Lo pay attention, asking if he is lagging behind the other knight's apprentices. He clenches his teeth and declares that he will do better. Aiden hears his name and cannot believe it. He remembers the image of the matured free knight Lo. Aiden sees him and thinks that he is very different from the version in his past life because he pretended to be a knight despite the fact that he was a mercenary for which he received the nickname. A flashback occurs of Lo and Alberio arguing with Aiden, realizing that he owed him his life several times despite their differences. He remembers that there were several S-rank mercenaries there including him, but this guy. A damaged sword is stuck in the ground. Fires are raging around. Aiden states that Lo died fighting alongside everyone else against the crazy dragon. Aiden realizes with a smirk that he expected to see his face in hell, but now he finally feels like he has returned to the past. Aiden walks over to them, the trainer asking what happened. Aiden approaches Lo, who excitedly asks if he wants to talk. Aiden shouts loudly that the guy just addressed him inappropriately, as he is supposed to state his name and rank when addressed by a superior. He bows his head and apologizes, introducing himself as an apprentice knight greeting Lord Aiden. Lo is furiously thinking about how he couldn't concentrate, not understanding why this rude guy would start bothering him. Aiden looks at him with crazy eyes and asks if he thought about the fact that he was bothering him. Lo screams in fear that it is not so. While realizing that he can quit right now as he wanted, Aiden mockingly enjoys the sight of the guy writhing, and for the first time he is happy to be in the body of a scoundrel. Aiden puts his hand on his shoulder and invites him to come to the training ground tonight. Aiden comes closer. He says something to the frightened student. He looks in shock at the interlocutor, who smiles. Adonis holding the sword leaves and the interlocutor shouts after him. Aiden with a grin thinks that such a meeting is fate, and considering his debt to the guy, he will give him a small gift. A huge moon shines in the sky. Aiden is sitting on a bench opposite the training dummies. He looks at the sky. Aiden turns around and greets Lo. The guy tremblingly looks at Aiden and asks how he knows his secret. Tears flow from his eyes and he clarifies if it is really true. Lo cries and asks if the young master can really heal his hand. The guys were drinking and cheerfully discussing something. Lo smiled, continuing to think about the desperate wish left unfulfilled in his past life. He sat at the table realizing that in the end he became the same as everyone else. Intending to repay his last debt with this, putting a cup of drink on the table, Lo realized that he could have been a simple knight. If his hand was fine, he was nicknamed the One-Armed. He cried in front of Aidens, asking if he could heal his hand. The man was shocked to realize that Aiden knew his secret, although he did not tell anyone about it. Aiden indifferently answered that his hand was affected by mana deficiency syndrome. The guy was shocked by this news. He held his shaking hand, understanding why it was numb, but there was still a big problem. He cautiously asked if the disease was incurable. Lo was outraged by the calm answer that the disease was incurable because he had just said that he could cure him. Aiden looked at him indifferently, understanding that the cure would be found in 10 years and for now they did not know how to treat it. Aiden stood next to him calmly answering that he knew the cure and was ready to cure the hand. The guy turned around expecting to hear his condition. Aiden, with a creepy smile on his face, offered to sign a contract. The man unrolled the scroll to read the terms. He was very shocked. The scroll contained the terms of the contract. Firstly, he must spar with the guy every day. Secondly, he must carry out all his orders. Lo indignantly held out the contract, calling it a slave contract. But the guy was not embarrassed by anything. He did not understand how he could trust the scoundrel. He sighed and closed his eyes, accepting the terms of the contract because there was no other choice. Aiden smiled creepily and widely, realizing that he would soon be able to make him his slave and also take that item as a bonus. The guy gloated. The interlocutor was quite creepy. A carriage with horses passed by the fortress. This is a few days later in the town of Marilan. Lo sat near the carriage window asking Aiden if they were really in the right place. He crossed his arms, sitting opposite, asking if he doubted him, to which he received a negative answer. Suddenly the wheels of the carriage stopped. The driver held the reins, announcing that they had arrived. Aiden headed towards the house, telling Lo to follow him. He was horrified, wondering if his arm could be cured in such a place. The men approached a dilapidated and old house. They stood in front of a sign on the wall that said that this was a pharmacy, not a clinic, and that they did not produce drugs. The boy touched the door, remembering how Lo had come here for medicine in the past. Thinking that someone was looking for a cure for the syndrome here, they opened the door to the pharmacy. Aiden, recalling how in the past they had failed to find anything, the boy looked around, calling for the owner, and then realized that no one was there. He found himself in front of a huge painting, asking Aiden what it meant. The boy looked at it, answering that it was the Philosopher's Stone, a superstition believed in by magicians and alchemists. The stone was bright red, but it was imaginary, and supposedly could even bring the dead back to life. His gaze widened with the realization that he had transcended the divine realms of death and time, and the idea of a stone was not so absurd. Red eyes appeared from the darkness. The creature noted that ordinary people would hardly know this story. He looked calmly, answering that he had heard something somewhere, remembering how Calcis and Shara had talked about it. The stranger with the pipe said that they had not had guests for a long time, but they were not in business. The guy standing in front of her asked his opponent to leave, which he did. Lo closed the door behind him. Light leaked through the barred windows. The guy approached Cassie, calling her by name, which surprised her. Aiden looked and said that his knight suffered from mana deficiency syndrome, and she was interested in this disease. The girl's eyes widened when he called her an alchemist of the beast race. Cassie took off her hood, surprised at how much the guy knew. The boy started to approach her. He raised a finger, noting that she also had mana deficiency syndrome. The girl was shocked, not understanding how he knew this. Her pipe in her hands was especially significant, because her symptoms were more severe, and without the grass leaves, her condition would worsen. The disease had affected all her organs. She closed her eyes, agreeing with his words, but noticed one mistake. She looked at her pipe, saying that she had not yet found a cure, which meant she could not cure the knight. Aiden stood in front of her, promising to protect and support research on his territory. Cassie tried to refuse. He placed a piece of paper on the table, telling her to read the notes. The girl took it, starting to study it. Cassie reacted in shock to the notes, holding the paper in her hands. The boy looked at her, saying that this was the right medicine. He remembered how the girl had talked about it a lot in the past, but he could not remember it perfectly. He watched her study the notes, noting that he came to be understood by someone even with incomplete information, asking if it was impossible. Now, Cassie trembled and asked to give her half a month for everything. Aiden laughed evilly in front of her. The girl was surprised by the existence of such a method and how she was seen through. Aiden touched his chin, noting how difficult it would be for the girl because of the rare ingredients. She looked at him incredulously, realizing that the guy wanted something in return. Aiden asked for a ring. He pointed to the ring on her hand. The girl responded sarcastically that it was impolite of him to want a woman's ring. The guy seriously responded that jokes were not needed because he knew the purpose of this ring. Cassie also looked seriously and responded that the guy should know the value of the ring. The ring with a bright red stone was unusual. It was an artifact that increased speed thanks to it low reached rank S. So for the girl, it was the only means of protection in her situation. The guy frowned, promising the girl that she wouldn't need the ring if she came to the Duke's house. The girl calmly replied that she didn't mind as long as she could continue her experiments, but she was worried about rumors. Aiden put his hands in his pockets, posing as a noble scoundrel who didn't care about people's rumors. The girl looked at him in surprise. She smiled, calling him an interesting person. Cassie handed him the ring, asking about housing and food, to which she was told that she would have to earn trust. The bright sun was shining over the Duke's mansion. The guys and the girl arrived at the mansion. Aiden was awkward at first, but he got used to it. Philip was running towards Aiden. He shouted that the matter was very urgent. He ran towards them, informing the gentleman about a big problem. Philip tried to catch his breath, saying something about Carl. Aiden was in shock. His younger brother had disappeared on the mountain of monsters. The man stood in front of him. Philip was telling him that Carl had assembled an investigation team after hearing about the disappearance of a man and not returning. He tensed up, asking what was wrong with the search team. Realizing that there must be small monsters on the mountain, Aiden was angry, hearing from Philip that they would leave soon. Clutching his head, he was worried that if anything happened, he would have to take the place of the heir and the plan of revenge would not be carried out. So, he had to save his brother. The guy pointed to the girl, telling the butler to take the girl to her room, and he needed to join the search team. He turned to the girl, telling her about the request. The butler was shocked by her. The sky was still blue. The man stood in front of his son and the search team. He looked, asking if Aiden wanted to join the search team. Aiden looked, answering positively. He was very indignant when he refused, trying to find out the reason. The soldier stood in rows with pikes. The man answered that it was a simple case of missing and he could not let his son go to such a dangerous place. The boy turned away and cried, not imagining what could happen to his brother. He fainted sobbing, realizing that if something happened to his brother, his plan for revenge would come to an end, to which he was told that he was a little disgusting. The father hugged his son. He could not believe that he cared so much about his brother and sent him on his way, telling him to be careful. The men looked at the knight. Aiden's father entrusted him to him, saying that he could only trust him. From the young man, there was a lot of trouble in his opinion. A raven flew over the dry Aiden. It was a mountain of monsters. Spiel was in front of the young man. He was a knight of the Order of Aiden, his vice-captain. The knights dispersed to the supposed attack site. Assuming that they were attacked, their tracks disappeared from there. He took the blade in his hand, realizing that it was a goblin weapon. The guy looked at the blade, realizing that there were too many strange things here. Aiden looked into the depths of the dark forest, realizing that Carl and the knights were defeated by goblins who erased tracks. And there was one explanation for this. It was Hobgoblin, the Goblin King, who had intelligence and strength on a different level than other goblins. He looked at Spiel, saying that this was the Goblin King. The knight tensed up because he was beyond his strength, offering to prepare and then return. Aiden thoughtfully said that they did not have time because people could be eaten, instructing them to take a search dog with them. Spiel looked at the dissatisfied guy, saying that dogs had already been brought, but he was ordered to bring the dog without talking. It was an Ikita Inu. The guy liked the dog right away. He took the cork out of the bottle with the potion. Everyone was surprised. The guy gave the dog the potion. The knight was puzzled about what this scoundrel was doing with the animal. The dog's nose turned orange. She suddenly barked loudly. People did not understand what happened to her. Aiden behind the dog said that it was a potion to enhance the sense of smell that Cassie bought him before leaving. The guy looked at the knights telling them to follow the dog. It was already dark in the forest. They found a goblin village. Spiel asked Aiden to look somewhere. Carl and the others were still sitting in the cage. They were still alive. Aiden frowned, realizing that they were not too late. He was ahead of the knights. Spiel behind noted that something was wrong. 3 goblins were standing next to each other. The guy was puzzled how there could be 3 chieftains in one village. Spiel looked at the soldiers, telling everyone to be ready because their opponents were hobgoblins. Aiden stroked the dog. The men looked at each other. The knight told the boy to free the hostages and run with them. The boy frowned, finding 3 chieftains incredible, but with that many knights, the search party would cope anyway. The stars were shining in the night sky. The knight was drawing his sword from its sheath. Spiel drew his sword and ordered an attack, intending to save the younger lord. The goblins and chieftains noticed their invasion. The knight, lifting his feet off the ground, shouted about how they dared to touch the young master Carl. Spiel jumped high above the knights and goblins, intending to destroy all opponents. The hostages in the cage rejoiced, noticing the knights, realizing that they were saved. The young man broke the lock on the cage with a dagger. He went inside the cage asking the hostages if everything was okay. They were surprised by his appearance. Carl turned around, pronouncing his name in surprise. With the dagger, he untied everyone's hands. Aiden looked at his brother and the knights, saying that they would provide support and that they should quickly run from here. Realizing that it was time for him to leave, Carl touched his brother, telling him to be careful with the monsters, and Aiden was surprised. The young man shouted at his brother with all his might about the danger behind him. There was a huge monster behind the young man that was going to crush him. He was perplexed. A strong blow fell on him. The hostages were worried about him. The guy managed to dodge, forgetting about the reason why there were 3 hobgoblins. The huge troll roared. He was the most terrible monster among the humanoid demons. He was of a higher rank. The young man crouched, shouting to his younger brother to take the villagers and run away first. Carl in the cage shouted to his brother that it was a troll and he could die. Aiden smiled slightly, taking out his sword, saying that he would not die because he was his older brother, but Carl reacted skeptically. His hands clenched the hilt of the sword. The young man pounced on the troll with an attack. The monster swung his fist straight into the ground. His hand pressed the ground. Aiden struck the demon, managing to dodge. The troll fell to his knees. His leg was wounded. The wound glowed. Then it quickly healed. The out-of-breath youth expected this because his regenerative power is enormous. He cannot defeat him with his strength alone. He smiled slightly, looking at the monster, thinking of something. The troll swung again and roared loudly. The youth stood next to him, something glowing in his hand. The knights panicked, not understanding. What was the troll doing there? The knight swung his sword, telling the youth to let him figure it out himself. He bared his teeth, frowning internally, begging the youth to wait for his help. The troll's fist swung to strike. Aiden somersaulted in the air, dodging the monster's blow. In the air, he clutched the sword and the stone he asked the girl for before leaving, realizing that it was time to use it, so he activated the Ring of Swiftness. The finger on his sword hand sparkled and activated for 10 seconds. Still flying above the monster, he realized that he had not yet reached that stage in this life. He dodged the fist flying at him, realizing that everything was possible with this ring. The youth wounded the troll in the hand with which he was about to strike. Many swings of the blade and speed left many wounds on the monster. The troll roared loudly from the wounds left. Aiden's sword suddenly glowed blue. He delivered the final blow with the sword. Realizing that he had reached the aura of the sword, the knight looked, telling everyone to quickly help the youth because he had only finished with one side. Spiel saw the boy flying in the sky, and on his sword there was blue energy, guessing that this was the stage of the aura of the sword that he had not reached. Aiden flew with a completely empty look. He flew straight into the foliage of a tree. He got stuck near a bird's nest. His whole body ached. He looked at his shaking hand, realizing that he had been using the sword aura for 10 seconds, and his body was not moving. The bird was flying around the boy in the tree. The knights were looking for him below, and he realized that the ring should be used with caution. The sun's rays fell on the windows of the mansion. It was the next day. The man stood by the window folding his hands, realizing how many people were hurt. He told the bowing knight to compensate the losses of all the families of the injured and dead to the maximum. He turned around to ask about something. The man looked at the troll outside the windows, asking if the boy was able to defeat him, to which he received confirmation. His gaze drooped, wondering if this was the son he knew, because he not only used the sword aura but also defeated the troll. The boy was sitting on the bed. There was a blue aura around him. All this was the same night. The mana supply inside Aiden was increasing. He felt it. Even if it was an instant when using the sword aura, his fist clenched, realizing that he was still too weak. Frowning, the boy noted that he needed to become stronger to crush them. He looked at the flying creature. Liking his determination, Aiden jumped up, asking where it came from. Realizing that it was that voice, the creature smiled with its sharp teeth, realizing that he had guessed that he was a demon lord. In front of him appeared a small flying underlord. The boy began to laugh, thereby angering the creature. He laughed loudly until he cried at the sight of it. The underlord was furious, blaming him for this since he was a weakling. The boy wiped away his tears, asking how he was able to show himself. Looking at the flying demon, the boy listened to how only he could see it since they were one. Its manifestation depended on the boy's strength. With a hand to his face, he skeptically asked if he would always see it since he did not want to. The underlord considered it quite rude. Aiden sat cross-legged, pondering the curse the creature had freed itself from, asking its real name. With its back turned, the creature grimly replied that it had long since lost its name, and was now only existing. The underlord looked at him in bewilderment when the boy called him a curse. He looked at the indignant demon, explaining that his name was due to the fact that he was the curse placed on him, but it was still too stupid for a demon. Aiden looked at him with displeasure, casually calling him names and then calling him a curse again. The underlord exhaled, asking him if the boy was going to calm down. It was a quiet night over the mansion. The boy called him names again on purpose until he was burned. Black Boots walked through the mansion a week after what happened. Aiden knocked on the door. Cassie looked at the guy who entered with a testicle. He asked about the cure. The girl called him Troll Master. The boy looked at her, realizing that she was calling him that considering that he looked like a troll. He didn't like it. Troll Slayer sounded better. He stood next to him asking where Lo was. He was inside. The boy looked inside with interest. Lo was sitting with his back to him. The crying knight turned to Aiden. He looked at his hand with tears, saying that it was now moving and had returned to normal. He bowed before Aiden, surprising him. The knight cried and trembled, thanking him for finding out and curing his condition. Resolutely looking at the boy, Lo swore to dedicate his entire life to him despite his insignificant origin. Aiden smiled slightly and evilly, realizing that from now on he would plow like a slave for him, so he gladly accepted the oath. He looked at Cassie, asking if she had been treated. The girl looked and answered that her syndrome was unusual, so she needed a month to study it. They looked at each other. The young man praised her. The girl denied it because it was all thanks to the method he told. Lo was afraid of the enraged hero because he was called the master of trolls again. He furiously shouted at the knight to quickly come out if he was completely healed because he had work. The guy squeezed his hand, enthusiastically, offering him any task for himself. The sun was shining brightly over the city. Lo was straining himself because his first task was physical labor. The birds flew away. His cry for help was heard throughout the city. The guys came to the merchant, who was glad to see them. His eyes sparkled at the sight of the troll. Considering its external condition, it will sell well because it is a rare material. The young man held out a scroll, asking if it is possible to spend the proceeds from the sale on buying herbs. The man unfolded the sheet of paper with a smile, saying that their trading group had everything. But instead of herbs, he noticed poisonous plants there. The creepy smile and the guy's words about them being herbs clearly scared and confused the merchant. He awkwardly played along, realizing what could happen if he ran into such a person. Aiden walked along contentedly. The knight trailed behind. The young man was happy with the easy money. The butler came out to meet him, obviously going to tell him something. The guy was surprised when he was told that his father wanted to see him. A hand knocked on the door. Aiden opened the door, asking his father if he had called. He was very shocked by what he saw. His father was with Cetus. The young man was shocked, not understanding what he was doing there. His jaw dropped when the man told him that he knew about the rumors, adding that he was pleased to meet him in contrast to how rude he had been before. Aiden did not have positive memories of him. He answered without interest that he was also pleased to meet him and introduced himself. The man smiled. The young man greeted him by his full name. This pleasantly surprised the guest. He asked if the guy knew about him. Aiden looked at him, answering positively. Cetus' face and profile did not allow one to forget that he was one of the few in the Empire who had reached the stage of a sword master. The sword master stood on a rock, light emanating from him. This is what the sword master stage looked like, which all knights dreamed of. The young man was one of the owners in the past. The man laughed in front of the young man, telling the Duke that he had raised him well, but he still had a lot to learn. The Duke looked at the guest worriedly, asking him to leave his territory because orcs had recently attacked there. Cetus looked from behind, saying that this was not only their territory, talking about suspicious things related to the cult of slaughter. Remembering Spica, the young man got angry, remembering that he also had business there, intending to get to the girl. The man walked towards the Duke, talking about strange movements in 3 different places at the same time, asking if it was a coincidence. The man with his hand on his chin thought about it. Because it was strange, the opponent asked for help because they were going to create an investigation group. Cetus smiled slightly with his teeth, intending to talk about something else. He grabbed the young man by the shoulders, offering him to join the knightly order, shocking the son and father. His eyes shone with blue flames. The guest told what he had heard about the guy before, considering the rumors of his success nonsense. Blue energy emanated from Aiden. The man told how the coincidences disappeared the moment he saw him in person. Cetus said with a smile that he would make him the greatest swordsman on the western continent, and swore by his name. He frightened the Duke with his gaze, promising to take care of the young man, cutting off any objections. The guy was silent. He was told that the choice was his. He smirked. Looking at the guest, he refused such a valuable offer. Cetus seriously asked the guy if he understood what it meant to join this order. Receiving a positive answer, Aiden answered with a smile that he could become a master of the sword himself. He had already gone through this in the past, so he was sure that he could do it again. He looked at the man slightly. Frowning, he said with a smile that he could scratch him. Cetus was very indignant when he heard his words. The Duke was afraid for his son. The man asked him again, considering his words rude. Suddenly, the table with teacups on it began to vibrate. The sun was shining in Kona, but they also began to vibrate. The man stood in front of the guy with red eyes. Everything around was shaking. He called the boy funny. Aiden stood with a smile, realizing that he was using the fear mastery, making you tremble from your murderous aura. This is exactly what he expected. The man smiled at him, asking if he was sure he could stand up for his words, internally, wondering how he held up against the fear of mastery. The boy smiled with excitement, offering him a bet. Cetus narrowed his eyes, asking the boy again. The boy firmly declared that he would join the order if he did not inflict a single scratch on him, knowing that he had a weakness for betting. The guest was surprised when the conversation turned to his sword, which he would give up in case of his loss. The man looked menacingly at Aiden and asked again. The tea on the table soon stopped shaking. Cetus laughed loudly when he heard that he wanted his family heirloom, telling the Duke that his son was not like him. The guest looked at the prostrate Duke, assuming that he could not withstand the mastery of fear, and fainted. Grinning in a smile, he accepted the bet. Aiden was worried, answering Underlord that the sword must be taken out at the first possibilities. The black sword stood on the floor. It was one of the legendary ones called Beelzebub. The opponents found themselves on the field opposite each other. The guy was holding a sword in his hands, asking if the man planned to use the ogre-slaying sword against the goblins. Cetus threw his sword over his shoulder, and replied that he did not know who the young man was and that it was a knight's duty to always give his all. Aiden was angry to hear this knightly politeness again, knowing that it had not changed in the past or in the future. The man held his sword over his shoulder with his right leg extended. The duel had rules. Firstly, no aura blade was to be used. And secondly, Cetus did not move his right leg. Aiden stood in front of him knowing that the conditions of the duel were no obstacle for the opponent, and he would be knocked out if he simply rushed. They were being watched by spectators, so the opponent suggested that the duel should begin. The young man held his sword in his hands, agreeing to the start of the duel. In an instant, he rushed towards his opponent. The man was indignant at his actions. The boy's attack was repelled by a simple blade of the sword which blocked his path. Cetus pointed his blade where the enemy's point hit, noting that Aiden had been in battle since he was throwing himself at his neck. The young man swung his sword, saying that he knew about blocking the attack. He expected an easy block. He dealt many blows, all of which the enemy parried. The man blocked the attacks with displeasure, asking what kind of fencing this was. It reminded him of incompetent mercenaries. Aiden held his sword to the ground, listening to how the enemy would fix it when the younger one joined the knightly order. He was burning with rage. He was angered by the words about incompetent mercenaries. The guy threw all his might at the enemy, intending to see how he would cope with it. Cetus held the sword, smiling, declaring that he was not going to lose to such a simpleton. The man did not notice the attack, so he was surprised. It was a knightly breakthrough. The blade was right in the man's face. He barely dodged, not understanding what it was. The boy attacked him just like he did in his past life. The knights were shocked by what they saw, realizing that the rumors about the troll's victory were not a lie. The Duke watched the battle tensely, wondering if his son could handle the enemy. Cetus tensed up, holding the sword with both hands. He barely held back a blow with the sword, not understanding what kind of strange sword play this was. The boy swung the weapon. The movements were chaotic, but aimed at vital points. With wide eyes and grinning, he understood that this was incomprehensible, and he had to take this boy with him. Aiden saw the blade of the sword approaching. He dodged the swing of the enemy's sword. The boy clenched his teeth. Considering this chaotic movement, the Underlord said that the boy would have been cut down in half if he tried to block. Aiden jumped back from his opponent. The man looked at him with a smile and said that he was using an interesting technique, but that was all he had. He held the sword, bowed, asking to continue because he was still standing on his feet, standing opposite the guy. The man laughed loudly, declaring that his opponent does not disappoint him, and his eyes are sharp. Holding the sword above himself, he wished with a smile. "Welcome to your knightly order." The young man grinned with his sword, thanking him in advance. The guy stood in front of the enemy. In its place, there were only swings. They disappeared in front of the enemy's eyes. Cetus was shocked. There was no one in front of him. At first, he thought it was the speed of the young man. Aiden swung his sword and wounded the enemy in the shoulder. Hiding his skills, he was able to deceive him. The wound was on the shoulder. Out of breath, the guy looked back contentedly, saying to himself that he would treat his family heirloom well. The knights watched, not understanding what was happening and whether it was over. The Duke was shocked. The rest rejoiced. The guy stood listening to the shouts of the audience. He did not care that he used the ring. As the Underlord noted, the ring was shining on his hand. The demon suggested that the guy was more suitable for the underworld. He was quickly shut up, but in response, he called the boy a cheat. The opponents stood opposite each other. The boy denied the praise, citing luck. Looking at the man, the boy was surprised because he thought he would take his hand, but there was only a scratch. Cetus handed him his sword, telling him to take it because he lost the bet. Aiden took the sword with both hands, thanking and promising that he would be careful with this weapon. He gloated, looking at the weapon, trying to shut up the curse. There was a clear night above the mansion. The boy held the sword. The curse congratulated him on his purchase. The young man looked skeptically, asking where the one who called him a crook recently was. The Underlord smiled, saying that he did not know how to use the sword correctly. Aiden looked indignant at the curse, who told that he knew the secret of the legendary swords, which people do not know. The young man with a cry asked if they were talking about a secret or a curse. The boy ran his hand over the blade as the curse set its conditions for telling the secret. Blood suddenly began to flow from the blade of the knife. The weapon began to glow in the hand of its owner. The Underlord looked indignant at how he managed to conclude a blood pact. Looking displeased, Aiden said that he knew about his subordinate's possession of dark swords. Beelzebub glowed red. This is one of the legendary swords they were cursed with and kept the power of their corrupt lord. The boy looked at the weapon, realizing that to awaken, one must soak him in blood and make a blood pact. He gloated over the curse, telling him to prepare to take one holy potion a day. In return, he begged for forgiveness. The sun shone brightly in the sky. The next day had arrived. The Duke was sitting at a table writing something with a quill. In front of the table stood Aiden, who was asking for permission to join the search party. The man looked worried, saying that this search was dangerous despite his strength, and it was difficult for him to give permission. Behind the boy, a man was drinking tea. The young man mentioned that he would go with him. The man laughed and agreed to the Duke's invitation, promising to look after his son. He turned around saying that he would ensure the safety of his son no matter the cost. The Duke with his hand on his head sighed, explaining that this was not a picnic. The young man looked at him saying that he understood and the investigation concerned the safety of their territory, so he wanted to go too. The man stood behind telling the Duke to let his son go with the search party. The guy smiled slightly creepily, understanding how well it was said this time he was going to prove his worth. The man's hand was on his shoulder from behind. The guy was communicating with the curse. He understood that this was to awaken the weapon. The young man smiled widely and slightly because the second condition was to drink the weapon with life force. He needed to defeat the monsters. The young man licked his lips madly, telling the monsters to wait for him. Then even the curse took pity on them. It was cloudy in the Pyron Mountains. The birds were flying away. Some action was happening in the forest. Monsters ran out of the forest and attacked. The goblin bared his teeth and rushed to attack. In the forest, huge creatures with red eyes scared the monsters that ran away at the sight of them. The guys rode into the fortress. Aiden looked up, realizing that this fortress was built to protect against the demonic monsters of the Pyron Mountains. He saw how the fear at the entrance yawned. Realizing that the facilities and soldiers were in complete disarray, not understanding how they would hold back the attack of the monsters, a man bowed before them, wishing them welcome. The man with a mustache introduced himself as Taimon, the chief officer of the fortress. Welcoming the guests cordially, he looked slightly at the youth, calling him the master of trolls. The knights behind discussed the youth, wondering why he had such a nickname, coming to the conclusion that it was because of his resemblance to a troll. Lo got angry and insulted them, but the youth stopped him. Aiden was calm, which surprised the underlord, who explained that a fight would not lead to anything good. He had heard this many times. Cetus, with a hand to his face, suggested that because of the fresh air, there were many bugs here, which made a lot of noise. With red eyes, he threateningly addressed Taimon, who agreed with the fresh air. The knights behind them hesitated and fell silent. The boy smiled, knowing that the man would always have something to say. The three men walked through the fortress. Taimon heard that there were monster attacks in each territory. Aiden turned to him, asking if anything had happened to them. He looked at Cetus, arrogantly, answering that there was nothing to worry about in their fortress, angering the boy with these words. The knight looked at him and asked if it meant that there was no danger if the monsters lived right in front of the fortress, to which he received a positive answer. Taimon pointed his hand towards the mountains, saying that the orcs settled in the center of the mountain range, suggesting that this was why the monsters did not come down. The boy looked skeptically, knowing that the idea of monsters keeping other monsters at bay was complete nonsense. He noticed that the underlord was saying something. He was foreshadowing that something grand was coming. Aiden turned his head to the side, but did not notice anything. In an instant, he was shocked by what he saw. Turning around, he shouted to the Viscount that the monsters were approaching and that they should quickly close the gates. The man laughed, saying that the guy was joking too much, but the knight told him to give the order to close the gates anyway. In an instant, everything shook. The Viscount wanted to be indignant, but the shaking shut him up. Cetus calmly replied that it was a wave of monsters. Crowds of monsters began to run out of the forest. The guards of the fortress were scared, asking the Viscount what to do. Taimon trembled in panic because of what was happening. The knight addressed them from the walls, telling them not to wait and to quickly close the gates. The guards at the gates began to hastily try to close them faster. The soldiers were ready. The gates were gradually closing. The beasts slipped through at the last moment. It pounced on the guard, knocking him down. He tearfully screamed from helplessness. Aiden slew the monster with his sword. After killing the monster, the gate finally closed. The young man held the bloody sword, knowing that it was not enough, but the weapon was good at sucking out life energy. He stood aside while the guards discussed how he had just slain the monster, and the rumors about the troll were most likely not a lie. The boy was annoyed when the curse called him a troll master, so he told him to shut up. His words disgusted him. The soldier bowed before Aiden, thanking him for saving him. Turning to the soldier, he advised him to grab his weapon and defend the fortress instead of gratitude. Lo ran up to him, asking if the young master was okay. Aiden did calmly, telling the other man to look at this. They were standing in front of a closed gate behind which a huge crowd of monsters swarmed. He smiled creepily, gloating that they would be his daily snack. The knight did not understand him. The young man smiled like a maniac, talking to the sword. Licking the blade of the knife in his hands, he came to his senses, realizing what he was saying now. The sword was shrouded in red energy. It was sucking out the gluttonous instincts of its owner. The guy looked at the sword with embarrassment, realizing that he needed to be more careful. He looked with a smile, thinking that since he had come to awaken his weapon, he would gratefully accept all the life energy. A man from the fortress waved to the young man, saying that they would meet after cleaning. Aiden extended his hand and shouted to him that he would figure it out himself, advising him to rest. In an instant, the knight was no longer in the fortress. Aiden shouted in frustration. Cetus jumped on the crowd of monsters, leaving a blue trail behind him. The man shouted with a smile that he should take out all the monsters at once since it was so troublesome. The guards watched in shock as he used the aura blade that only a sword master could use. Clutching his head, the boy asked the knight to leave him at least half or at least a quarter. The man's swings left a long magical trail that quickly decapitated all the monsters. The lifeless bodies of the goblins lay on the ground. The man grinned happily, noting how long it had been since he had used his power properly. The Viscount approached them and thanked them because thanks to them they were able to fight off the monsters without much damage. The boy shed a tear. The curse came to him, and he thought that for the sake of mockery. Aiden looked at the chatting men. The Underlord said that what he was talking about was not a wave of monsters. Aiden asked for details. He was shocked to hear that the Grandiose was not in the wave of monsters. Turning towards the light, the boy was indignant. What did he mean then? The boy was shocked to notice something behind him. A huge magic ball soared into the sky right above the boy. The boys shouted for everyone to leave. A large explosion was heard above the city. The warriors fell to the ground and did not understand what was happening. Cetus and Aiden were knocked off their feet by the shock wave, and the man shouted that with a fire spell of such a scale, a magician was targeting them. Gritting his teeth, Aiden answered that it was not a magician. The boy stands in front of a fiery forest, and the man asks if he knows what kind of creature it is, and he remembers that it is a fire spell in the Pyre Mountains, a creature from his past life. Remembering himself before, Aiden explains that because of this creature, he almost went to heaven in his past life, so he does not know how he could forget this monster. And the warrior does not believe that he was with heaven. The bells on the staff ring. The knight looks at him in fear and asks why they are all together. The orcs and trolls line up. The general screams in panic, asking how the wasteland trolls and the Pyre Mountain orcs could have united since they had always fought each other. Cetus tells Aiden that he will be back soon, but he replies that it is too difficult for Cetus alone. The man does not believe that it is too difficult for him. The guy asks to look at him at the very end of the horde. The leader is standing behind the orcs and trolls. The warrior is stunned by what he sees. Looking at the supreme troll, Aiden explains that this is a monster with magical power and strength comparable to a sword master. Looking at the enemies, Cetus turns to Addons and Lo to evacuate the people immediately. He risks something to go, and the fighter asks how he can deal with a creature that even he finds difficult. Turning his head to his comrade, Aiden asks Lo to lead the soldiers away and hold off these creatures with all his might, and he obeys him. The boy runs forward. Looking back, Cetus asks what Aiden is planning, explaining that the High Troll alone is a match for the Sword Master, so Aiden will not cope. Aiden seriously replies that the moment the Supreme Troll created an army of trolls, the difficulty of subduing him increased threefold, and even if a man went to fight him alone, he would not last long. Frowning, Aiden adds that there is one way for everyone to survive, and since they have little time, he will explain it briefly. The knights fight orcs and trolls. Aiden points his finger, explaining something. The warriors listen to him attentively. The knight shouts that this is ridiculous, and if Cetus leaves now, this place will turn into ruins within 30 minutes. Behind the characters, a tower explodes. Looking sullenly at the explosion, the warrior asks Aiden if he understands how absurd his words are. Aiden grimly replies that he understands him, but this is the only way out, and they do not have time. So, he asks to believe him at least once. The knight remembers Aiden's words that even if he fought him, he would at least be able to scratch him, and that for the sake of their territory, he also wants to help. Smiling widely, Cetus states that as expected, he cannot stop being amazed by him and decides to trust his comrade this time. Smiling, he turns to Aiden and says that if the guy makes a mistake, he will have to join his knightly order. Grinning, Aiden believes that this is what a person obsessed with gambling should do and age Aiden with him. Cetus' feet leave the ground. He flies away. As Aiden watches, an inner voice asks if there is only one supreme troll in this world and why he is sure that it is the same one he encountered in his past life. Aiden closes his eyes and asks if he knows how much orcs and trolls hate each other, and yet the only one who is able to subjugate and rule over orcs is this creature, and that too through the use of extremely brutal methods. The troll raises his fist up. He smashes the soldiers. Lo runs to attack. The guy cuts off the monster's head from a jump. Aiden remembers his friend with herbs and thinks that Lo has become strong enough to kill trolls because the herbs he gave him worked. And the demon thinks that this unusual method seems to have worked. The troll's head is on fire and Aiden thinks that they cannot be killed just like that. And it is not for nothing that the monsters led by the supreme troll are called an immortal army. The antagonist stretched out his hand and it glowed red. The soldiers see fire blazing from the troll's neck and they wonder if they killed him. A head appeared on the monster's body. Behind the troll stands its leader, and Aiden realizes that the supreme troll can constantly revive trolls. Aiden steps and thinks that usually it takes the sword masters or a blade or the archimage spell to destroy them. But he has another better way. Leaning his cheek on the sword, the guy calls him a kid and thinks that he must be hungry since he missed his meal earlier. So he decides to give him a lot of trolls to eat. But the Underlord thinks that Beelzebub must be hard. A large shadow of a troll falls on Lo. The guy frowned and assumed that after drinking the poison of the young master, that is medicinal herbs, he thought he became stronger. He looks at the orcs and the troll and realizes that he can't believe that everything will end like this because he hasn't even repaid the young master yet. The antagonist's fist rushes towards the character. Lo, closing one eye in thought, apologizes to the young master. Aiden stands with a sword on the troll's head and praises Lo for a job well done. He plunges the sword into the enemy's head. The troll screams in rage. From the ground, a friend asks the young master to be careful because even if he decapitates this creature, it will not die. Looking at the sword, Aiden tells Beelzebub that it is time for lunch. Holding the sword by the hilt, the guy thinks that he may not have the power of a sword master or an archmage, but he does have the power of Beelzebub's gluttony. Opening his mouth, the monster roars. Standing on the slain enemy, Aiden realizes that Beelzebub's gluttony absorbs the existence of its target, and after absorption, the target is completely destroyed. The leader of the trolls is very angry at what he saw. Looking at the sky, Aiden says that trolls really do have tastes, and one of them has a living force equivalent to dozens of warriors. The guy's eyes glow red. Or is shocked to see the stricken troll. Licking his lips, Aiden wonders if orcs are tasty, offering Beelzebub to try them. 2. Standing on the body of the dead antagonist, the guy thinks that although this is the fourth, it is still not enough. Smiling evilly, Aiden says that these trolls are really full inside. Wondering if there is seasoning and asks Beelzebub if it is true that no matter how many he eats, he still wants more. The trolls look at the enemy in rage. The leader raises the burning staff with a scream. Aiden quickly runs past the fire. Looking to the side, this guy seems very angry to him, and the demon tells him that instead of running around like a coward, he offers to meet him face to face like a real Dragon King Slayer. The main troll growls and the guy decides that in a past life he would have done the same, but now running is the only option, and if this fire magic even touches him, he will be fried. Aiden remembers how Cetus asked, so he needs to hold out until he arrives. The axe flies down. Aiden looks up because the Underlord tells him that there is danger above him. The orc makes a strike in front of the guy. Jumping back, Aiden says that these damned orcs really bother him, and the demon asks why the Dragon Slayer King does not absorb the orcs from the very beginning. The monster comes with a large axe, and the demon suggests that orcs may not be as good as trolls, but they still have a lot of life force. With a smile, Aiden explains that he has a use for them. Frowning, Aiden decides that if the esteemed Cetus arrives in time, then not killing the orcs will be more profitable. A large explosion rushes towards Aiden. He looks at the fire in shock and realizes that this supreme troll is using fire magic again. The antagonist sends flames in front of him. He walks on the scorched earth. He sharply lifts his head up. Aiden appears in the sky. Aiden tensely sees that now he is trying to burn everything, be it friend or foe. And without the ring of swiftness, he would have already been fried. Straightening his leg, the demon calls Aiden. The troll raises his staff up, and the Underlord says that if Aiden dodges in the air, then how is he going to avoid the next attack? The guy winces at these words. Hovering over the fire, he decides that his friend is right. He angrily screams that he cannot die in such a place. A ball of fire rushes towards the character. The orc and the warrior run. Swinging his weapon, Aiden uses the aura of the sword. Cetus puts out the flames and assures his friend that he held up well. Aiden is glad to see the knight, and the fact that he immediately put out the fire. Looking at his friend, Aiden thinks that as expected, the sword master is fast because he covered such a distance in such a short time. And looking at him, you can say that everything went smoothly. The orc prepares to strike. The leader of the monsters is furious, and does not understand how this guy ended up here. The other orcs look up. The guy is worried about the change in the situation, calling the troll disgusting, and the Underlord tries to cheer up the Dragon Slayer King. Aiden flies down, and the demon says that he is falling. Aiden flies down in horror, and asks to wait, wondering what will happen if he falls now using all his strength. The orc makes a jump. His paws land on the ground. The monster walks away from Aiden, and he thanks him. The orcs tremble with fear. The knights are very surprised that this orc just saved the young master. Speaking in his language, the orc apologizes to the king for not being able to protect him. Raising his fist up, the monster screams that they will take revenge on the trolls who humiliated them. Trolls appeared in front of the orcs. The knights look on in fear, seeing how the orcs suddenly attack the trolls, asking if they were on the same side, not understanding what is happening. The guy looks closely, remembering how he said that this is why the supreme troll could control the orcs. And his demon replies that everything is happening as he said. The orcs are sitting in prison, and Aiden explains that they use the orcs' loyalty to their tribe and leader against them, taking the leader and children hostage to control the orcs. The orc leader is sitting behind bars, and Aiden thinks, what if the hostages are released? Grinning menacingly, Aiden says that the enemy of his enemy is his friend, so he did not recklessly absorb the orcs. The troll's hand holds a stick and trembles. He looks angrily and realizes that his plan is falling apart. He roars ferociously. Cetus jumps on the antagonist with the sword. Gritting his teeth, the knight sees how his enemy defends himself with fire magic. So, he really is not inferior to the sword master, and as Aiden said, if he were alone, he would not be able to win. The orc leader sees the battles of the troll and the warrior. The orc rushes, making a blow at the enemy. The monster swings his sword, and Cetus realizes that if there is another sword master, the situation changes. The troll leader roars furiously. Swinging his sword, the fighter in the helmet tells him to stop screaming and just die. The troll bows his head, thinking that he can't die so senselessly, and will never forgive the people who killed his parents. His eyes and nostrils are burning with fire. Cetus is shocked to see this and doesn't understand what is happening, calling it a strange movement of mana. The orc stopped looking at what was happening. Fire is coming from the troll, and he wants to explode all the mana in his body and take them with him. The warriors are standing behind Cetus, and he understands that neither he nor the knights will be able to stop it and resist the flames. Turning to the soldiers, the man orders everyone to run as the antagonist is about to explode. Cetus sees Aiden and Lo running towards the enemy. The knight shouts at his friend to leave, otherwise he will die. Aiden smiles widely. He jumps on the troll with a sword. With thirst, Aiden declares that the last blow will be his. A huge explosion was heard. The black blade moved down. Fire gushed from the monster's mouth. With a predatory smile, the guy held the sword, saying that it was time for the main course. Bright waves of fire spread in all directions. His comrades, shielding their eyes with their hands, watched as the guy fought the supreme troll. Gritting his teeth, Cetus thought about what was happening. How was he going to cope with such a powerful explosion of mana? Did he have a plan? Aiden raised an eyebrow in confusion. Red winds flew from the blade. He thought that the life force and mana were in much greater quantities than he expected, and he thought that he could absorb it all. The monster opened its fanged mouth, gritting his teeth tensely. Aiden said that just a little more. The whirlwinds hovered near the stone. The glow of the blade grew brighter and brighter, and Aiden said that now it needed his help. The Underlord appeared next to him and asked how he could use it for such a thing, but if he promised not to drink holy potions for a week, he would help. Opening his mouth in displeasure, Aiden exclaimed that it was fine. Just let him hurry up, and thought that the sword had already absorbed enough life force. Now the last conditions for awakening the sword. The demon placed his hand on the blade. The Underlord looked at the black whirlwinds and called for the Lord of Gluttony Beelzebub to awaken. The guy thought that he needed to pour demonic energy into it to awaken the vicious lord who was sleeping in the sword. The long chains were crossed. The Lord of Gluttony opened his eyes with a vertical pupil and said that he had not seen demonic energy for a long time. He is the will of the Lord of Gluttony who sought to absorb even the sky who dared to awaken him. A fanged mouth opened. Aiden gritted his teeth, thinking that, as expected of the ancient lord of the underworld, such an overwhelming presence. If he was an ordinary person, he would be subdued and turned into a puppet. But he has something that this guy is most afraid of. The Underlord smirked and said that they have not seen each other for a long time. He asked who woke him up. The wolf's eyes looked scared. He asked why the Underlord is here. The demon frowned, telling him to stop talking and just hand over his authority. He grinned in displeasure when he heard that once he came to his senses, he would not be able to believe that he was seeing him, and hurried, asking whether he would hand it over or not. With a smirk, Aiden looked at the demon, thought that the Underlord destroyed all the vicious lords and became the ruler of the underworld. No wonder he was afraid of him, and said out loud that he could be useful, too. She changed her gaze to him, remembering that he simply kept his promise. Powerful waves of energy rose up, gritting his teeth with the effort, and Aiden asked Beelzebub to devour him. The eyes and mouth of the Lord of Gluttony were ablaze with fire. The high troll opened his mouth. He closed it when bright beams flew towards him. Lo held on to the ledge so as not to fly away and shouted. But a strong gust of wind. He must be careful. Opening his mouth in fury, Aiden called to become his strength. Frowning, the troll shouted a refusal in his own language. Later, the sky was clear and the remnants of the flames burned out on the ground. Putting out his hands, Cetus said that the wind had stopped. Where had the high troll gone? And Lo asked. It was over. Were they safe? Aiden looked down, wondering if this was the true power of the Lord of Gluttony's power. All this life force and mana. Suddenly, he covered his swollen cheeks with his hand and thought that he had eaten too much. The boy covered his mouth, hearing the Underlord's voice, saying that it was his fault that he tried to eat it all. He knew that it would happen, no matter how powerful the power was. If it was abused, it would turn into poison, as sad as it was. But he would have to let some of it go. The boy thought that there was no way he would consume it no matter what. He looked down. In front of him was a shining golden egg. Looking at it, the boy heard that it was a phoenix and thought that it was no wonder the supreme troll used fire magic. Touching the egg with his finger, Aiden thought that he had been consumed by the supreme troll and had fallen into a comioma state. This species was as rare as a dragon. How did it end up here? Aiden's mouth watered with greed. He thought that if he ate it, he would be able to use fire magic as well. The Underlord asked if he didn't say he was going to vomit from overeating. With a wicked smile, the boy confirmed but said that maybe using fire magic was a different matter. The spirit replied that watching him, he realized how reckless human greed could be. Sitting next to the egg, the boy thanked him for the treat. Suddenly, Cetus slapped him on the back with a smile, saying that he managed it after all. The boy's cheeks puffed out in dismay, and yet, he threw his stomach right on the egg, while the man asked if he was okay. An underlord noted that he deserved to be punished for his greed. Looking at the object in surprise, the man asked if this was a phoenix. Why was such a rare creature here? Standing with his head bowed, Aiden thought about his mother and life force. He should eat the phoenix too. Suddenly, a small crack appeared on the shell. Aiden looked at it in shock. The blazing light illuminated his bewildered face. The phoenix flapped its flaming wing and then flew up, spreading its bright wings. The Lord noted that the phoenix woke up after accepting the mana it had ripped out. The warriors looked at the flaming bird, exclaiming that it was the legendary phoenix. Seeing a phoenix in real life was a great fortune. Aiden clenched his fist in displeasure, and looking at the delighted Cetus thought that it was all because of him. He missed the chance that comes once in a lifetime. The bird landed on the dissatisfied guy's head. Aiden was surprised. A question was asked. The phoenix sat on the young master's head. The guy thought, "Why is it sitting on his head?" The flaming bird lowered its gaze. Then bright rays surrounded the guy's body. The comrades opened their mouths in shock, calling out to the guy. Looking thoughtfully at his palm, Aiden thought, he knows he tried to eat him, and now he's going to burn him alive. But he's not hot at all. What is this? A smile appeared on the phoenix's face. The underlord explained that this is the phoenix's blessing. It gives him significant resistance to most types of flames since he was resurrected by absorbing the mana he spent. Perhaps he sees him as his savior. Imagining the girl in the hat, the guy grinned wickedly and thought that fire resistance would come in handy later. Flaming feathers fell down. The phoenix flew into the sky. Aiden caught the feather while Cetus asked in shock if he was okay. He was just on fire. Gripping the feather with a smile, the guy replied that he was completely fine. A green monster appeared. Aiden heard with a smile that since they met, he had been experiencing one incredible thing after another and replied that he was as perplexed as he was because this was his first experience. Aiden looked away. Looking at the green monster, he asked, "He is the leader of the orc tribe. Why is he still here? Does he want to continue fighting?" The orc squeezed the handle of the blade, saying that the oath was broken. "He will pay." The orc leader with a determined look said that the price is death. Let him take his head. Looking at the orc in surprise, Aiden asked if he had broken his oath. Which one? He imagined the battle scenes, thinking that he had learned about the orc's oath. Then long ago, the head of the Rames family, and the orc chieftain had fought a duel for this land. The monster attacked the knight. The guy thought that the orc had lost the duel and had sworn to return to the mountains and never descend again. After which they had settled in the mountains defending this land. Aiden remembered the words of the man with the mustache that the orcs had settled in the middle of the mountain range and thought that was why they had not descended and had not begun to live there. Looking at the monster who had closed his eyes, the guy thought that orcs were a race that valued an oath more than their own lives. The orc had said that his head would be enough. Let his clan forgive him, he asked, indifferently turning away. Aiden said that he did not particularly need his head. Let him return back. The orc opened his mouth in surprise and said that it was the oath of his ancestors. He had to pay for breaking it. Aiden turned to him with displeasure, thinking that he was so noisy. Maybe he should just kill him. He was still protecting their territory, so it was better to be patient. A sly smile appeared on the guy's lips. He said that he should pay for this with something other than his head. The orc looked discouraged. The next day, parts of the castle were destroyed. Looking ahead confused, Cetus said that she was not sure what he was looking at, and Aiden asked if this was a compliment. Then thank you. The knight was dragging a sack on his back, wondering why the sand was so heavy. He looked at the orc in surprise, who was dragging several sacks and thought how they carried so much on themselves, as if they did not feel it. Watching this, the man said that orcs and humans work together. Raising his finger in satisfaction, Aiden said that it usually takes a month, but if the orcs help, it can be done in a week. The orcs are protecting the life of their leader. They get free labor. It's a win-win situation. Cetus exhaled, saying that as expected, he will never be able to understand it. It's still talking to a dragon that has lived for hundreds of years while standing. Looking at the frowning orc and the dumbfounded human builder, the man said that he thinks they should leave this matter in the slaughterhouse tower. Now that even the monsters from the wasteland have appeared, it is no longer in their power. Aiden tilted his head and said that he understood. An even more cunning smile appeared on his face, and he thought that he already got what he wanted, so it is no longer his problem. He came to awaken Beelzebub and even received the blessing of the Phoenix. Now, should he calmly go back and train some more? The dumbfounded hero rode on a horse with a wreath on his head. The people shouted, "Thank you for saving their territory. The young master is so cool." The villagers looked at each other in admiration. One said he heard the supreme troll was damaged by the young master's sword. The second added that he heard he can even control phoenixes. And the third added that not only phoenixes, saying that he can control orcs with one finger. Aiden blushed. He thought where all these distortions came from. He absolutely hates such superficial greeting ceremonies. The demon's voice was heard who said that this flower crown really suits the dragon slayer king. The people looked at the embarrassed guy in admiration. The underlord said that they are not superficial. He thinks they sincerely consider him a hero. The guy thought, "What's wrong with that? This is not money." And the demon said that again, talking about money, he really suits being a mercenary more than a knight. A smile appeared on the boy's lips. He thought that they thought of him as a hero. In any case, he really planned to train calmly this time. White clouds floated in the sky. The doors to Cassie's research lab were closed. Aiden looked down, asking, "Is there no way to fix this?" Standing next to him, Cassie apologized, saying that there is no way right now. It seems that the mana deficiency syndrome in her body was more serious than she thought, and a much more delicate medicine was needed than the one they treated the cute knight with. The boy looked at the girl with the pipe and asked how much it would cost. He could pay any amount. She replied that money was not the main thing. They needed an alchemist skilled enough to create high-class elixirs. With a slight smile looking at him, the girl said that such an alchemist could probably only be found in the imperial court. And yet, she was grateful to the young master. If she stayed there, she would have died, spending her entire life searching for a cure. Getting to his feet, Aiden asked if it was possible if they had an alchemist, and heard attempts to object. Turning away, Aiden said that he knew someone. Cassie looked at him in surprise when the guy said not to worry, to just let her wait here. He would bring him soon. The girl remembered how he looked at her while she was reading the documents, and thought that at first she had doubts. But he suddenly came to her and offered to tell her how to cure mana deficiency syndrome, even allocated funds for research. Trembling, Cassie covered her mouth with her hand, thinking that the second was acceptance. Knowing that her body would not last long, she had no choice but to accept his offer. She sat clutching her head. The third was despair. She was devastated by the fact that the method of healing her body was incredibly difficult. Aiden turned around looking over his shoulder, and the girl thought that before the people she had met so far had warm words but cold actions, but this man and his words were cold, and his actions had not felt such warmth for a long time. Cassie lowered her head and said that it was interesting. Tears flowed down her embarrassed face. She asked him to bring experienced alchemists. After all, her research was perfect. Aiden looked at her with a smile. He walked down the hallway hearing Underlord's words about doing this for someone else, saying that a sudden change in a person could be fatal. So let him be careful. Walking next to the window, Aiden mentally replied that he was just fulfilling a promise very important to mercenaries. And anyway, he was going to visit this alchemist soon. Looking ahead, the guy thought that he did not have much time left. Among the buildings in the city of Markellen 3 days later, there were offers to come for sweet fruits just brought from the Horned Kingdom, or to look at these wolf skins. Aiden in a black cloak looked at the people. Thinking that the largest city of free trade was such a lively city, the demon asked what he meant. Looking at the many people, Aiden thought that it was a hot city where it felt like everyone was working tirelessly. Then he remembered how the dragon burned everything with fire and continued that the city itself disappeared due to the attack of a mad dragon. Looking ahead, the guy in the cloak thought that it seemed like he was the only one who found this situation strange. He passed through the crowd, hearing the words of the Underlord, who asked where the skilled alchemist he spoke of was, and was told that she was on her way there, so she should keep quiet. A man in the outskirts of Markellen City in the slums area. The man clenched his fist, frightening the trembling man with the words that he told him that the goods should be ready by today. The man with glasses shook in fear, covering his head, and said that no matter how fast he worked, at best he could only make one per week. if he suddenly asked him to make twice as many top-quality elixirs? The man interrupted him, hitting his fist on the wall next to his head, and exclaimed that it was not his problem to be careful if he did not bring it tomorrow. Joseph grabbed his head in fear, hearing that he could get hurt. Putting his hand to his mouth, the guy shouted an announcement that he was offering a solution to those suffering from threats of attack and blackmail. The bandit and the alchemist turned to the guy, who continued to shout his advertisement. The man asked who this guy was. Let Karen take care of him. The man took a step, asking who he was and why he was here. The guy stopped next to the huge man and asked, "Does he not know who he is?" Joseph watched in fear as Aiden looked over the shoulder of the big guy and asked, "Maybe he is the one suffering from threats of attack or blackmail." Karen clenched his teeth and cursed. Swinging his sword, he exclaimed, "How dare he ignore him!" In the end, the big guy was sitting, leaning against the broken wall. The man looked at him in fear, and the second asked, "Who is this?" Confidently putting out his fist, Aiden told them to step back because he does not see the client. Aiden stood next to the beaten man. The second one swung his sword at him furiously, shouting, "How dare he joke with his people? He will kill him!" With a deft movement, Aiden dodged the attack. He had a sly smile on his face. With a wide smile, he took off his opponent's pants, revealing pantaloons with a bear. The opponent blushed, hearing the mocking question, and cursed that Aiden looked like a troll. The guy's eyes lit up black. He asked what he just said. The ashamed man swung his sword, asking if he thought he was the only one who could make fun of Cerberus, Markelen's top predator. He wouldn't get away with it. He would die. However, the sword shattered into pieces. The man looked at his broken blade with an expression of utter shock on his face. Aiden placed his hand on his shoulder and asked who he was. Aiden had a blindingly shining sword on his back, and the man asked how he used the sword's aura. Approaching with a predatory look, Aiden said that his eyes needed to be fixed. There was a beaten man lying at the feet of the disgruntled guy. He said that the guy compared him to a troll. He was lucky that he answered so easily. The Underlord said that he was the first one to use Beelzebub like that. The remaining man trembled in fear, asking what someone like him was doing in these slums. The guy took a step, turning to the mister. Looking at the alchemist with a smile, he asked about his offer. He needed help and offered his services at a reasonable price. Looking at him excitedly, Joseph thought that this awakened swordsman with a sword aura was offering him his help, and at such a low price. He wasn't going to ask for something crazy later. Aiden looked at him with a slight smile. The man wondered if he could even trust this man. But there was no other way. The alchemist's face wrinkled with tears. He asked for help. The man was dragging away a crying girl who was calling for her daddy. Joseph was a famous alchemist in the underworld of Markelen. His daughter was kidnapped by the criminal organization Guild Cerberus. With tears in his eyes, the man screamed, calling out for his daughter. The fat man put his hand on his shoulder and said that he used to be an alchemist in an interesting place. With a sly smile, the man told him to give them pills once a week and they would protect him and his daughter a good deal, not taking into account that this was a very dangerous place. With tears in his eyes, Joseph bit his lip in his past life. Joseph had been bringing these pills for years. Aiden looked at the shaking man and thought that when he found out that his daughter was already dead, he asked him for revenge and soon joined her in the afterlife. But that was only in his past life. This time it was not too late. With tears in his eyes, the alchemist shouted that he would give him anything he wanted. Let him save his daughter. With a sly smile, he agreed. With a sly smile, he reminded him that he must keep his word and give him anything he wanted. The voice of the Underlord was heard, who said that Beelzebub said that he was the first person whose gluttony was stronger than his. The guy deals. But he turned to the man who was trying to escape. He called out to him. The man turned around shaking. Aiden suddenly approached him, saying what he thought of him. Did he visit him for no reason? There were sounds of beatings in the corner of the slums and words saying that he had some questions, but he doubted that he would answer them voluntarily. So they would start with a few blows. The man exclaimed that he would answer right away, but it did not help. The man was sitting at the table in the Cerberus Guild headquarters. Guild leader Ankle tapped his finger on the table, saying that this time with 2 Joseph pills they should make a profit. Should he just take one since they are so good for the body? The door to the office opened. The man asked displeasedly who dared to enter his room without knocking. A guild member appeared at the threshold, and the man exclaimed that it was him. Did he bring the Joseph pills? The man's face was swollen and bruised. The leader asked why his face was like that. Standing behind a satisfied Remsticks exclaimed that he had found it. Leaning his hands on the table, Ankle asked who he was and what he had done to his guild member's face. He didn't know what he wanted to find in the tiger's den like that. He was stupid. Under the man's fingers was a shining object. He thought that he had an emergency artifact that would ring if he poured mana into it. Ankle's sly smile. He thought that his people would soon be here. So, he was finished. Under the clear sky stood a building. A draft drove a leaf around the room. From the tension, sweat appeared on Ankle's face. He thought, "Why is no one coming? Is the artifact broken?" Aiden walked through the room throwing his sword over his shoulder. The man asked if there was anyone outside here as an uninvited guest. The guy asked his guild member's head. The man's affairs lay outside. Aiden said that when he came earlier, they were all in a deep sleep. But looking with a shining blue eye, Aiden said that he would not let him fall asleep so easily. "Where is Joseph's daughter?" The leader's eyes glowed red. He said with a smile that he was a mercenary hired by Joseph. Let him not get impotent after he knocked down a couple of warriors. The man's fist glowed blue. He continued that because he was the strongest in this guild. There were bright flashes of blows. Fingers inserted a key into the keyhole. A beaten ankle opened the grate saying that she was here. Her in such a place they were really bad people. Someone answered that this child was unusual. He opened the grate. Passing first, the guild leader said that now she may seem calm, but usually. At that moment, Ellis's shining leg flew into his nose. From the force of the blow, the man flew head over heels. The girl's eyes glowed yellow. She promised that she would kill him. Glancing indifferently at the fallen leader, Aiden thought that she was pretty good, even if he left him beaten half to death. The guy looked away while the demon said that this child was using an interesting power. A powerful blow hit Aiden's hand. Ellis dealt many blows to the guy's body, but he blocked them all and mentally wondered, an interesting power. The Underlord replied that yes, this is the power of a very annoying guy. He looked down carefully, saying that it does not matter. It is not his business. His goal is to save her, and cannot be returned. Angrily knitting her eyebrows, Ellis screamed to be returned to her father. She goes to her dad and Aiden agrees. Out of surprise, she stared at him in surprise and asked, "Is she going to her dad?" With a fist of the girl, Aiden said that her father asked him to save her. They are going home. Ellis's fingers trembled and she asked, "Can she really go to her dad?" Aiden confirmed with a smile. He was surprised when Ellis hugged him around the neck. She burst into tears, screaming that she was scared she missed her dad. Hugging the girl, Aiden said that it was scary to stay here alone. Now she was okay. They would go to her dad. The Underlord hovered above and said that he did not think that he still had the ability to empathize in his head. Aiden exclaimed who he took him for, what he even thought of him. And the demon replied that it just seemed to him that he was a little different from what he was in his past life. Ellis opened the door to the room, calling out to her dad. The man turned around in surprise, recognizing her. The girl threw herself on his neck. Opening her mouth, she sobbed. There were tears in Joseph's eyes. He said that he was very sorry. Aiden stood behind him crossing his arms. The daughter was sleeping covered with a blanket. Sitting down at the table, Joseph thanked Aiden who said that this was not the end. With a very sly smile, he said that now the most important part, it was time to pay. Looking at him, the man said that of course he had to pay compensation. How much did he want? With a predatory smile, Aiden asked how much he thought his daughter's life was worth. Frowning, the man replied that she was more valuable to him than his own. Ellis scratched her cheek. Words were heard that if it was money, he would spend his whole life paying. Aiden tapped his finger on the table and said that he had plenty of money. But what if something else? Aiden's sly smile scared the man when he heard about his alchemy skills. Gritting his teeth, Joseph asked again, did he mean his alchemy? And Aiden explained that yes, that an alchemist with such skills is only possible. The man reached his hand towards the chest, saying that it was understandable. He helped him because he knew about his alchemy skills, but having received help, he must pay for it. In the chest was a small ball surrounded by a glow. Aiden thought that this is what he saw in his past life. Opening the lid of the chest, Joseph said that this is the highest class elixir he has. Let him try it. He made it entirely with his skill. The guy's eyes were drooling. He asked if he could drink it. Aiden replied that of course it was part of his payment. He heard the Underlord say to wipe it off. It was disgusting. Throwing a pill into his mouth, the guy replied that he said so because he had not tried this elixir. He felt as if splashes of water surrounded him and said that if he drank, bright rays spread around. Aiden's eyes glowed blue. Aiden clenched his fist surrounded by a blue glow and thought that as expected, he was simply magnificent. Just one elixir doubled his mana supply. With a smile, Aiden said that it was excellent beyond comparison. The alchemist replied that as compensation, they would invite him to make these elixirs for him. Smiling, Aiden replied that instead of doing that, how about joining the Duke's family? If he agreed, they would protect him and his daughter. Joseph opened his mouth in surprise, asking the Duke's family. Come to think of it, who was he? Aiden apologized for introducing himself so late. Looking at him confidently, the boy introduced himself as the eldest son of the Rames family. The alchemist opened his mouth in shock, saying, That wasn't he the guy that the whole city was talking about lately? The boy was displeased, thinking that he was the troll prince again. The spirit snorted, saying that it seemed like he had a bad reputation. Sitting opposite, the confused man asked what brought the young master to such a humble place, and he replied that he urgently needed his help. Smiling slightly, Remez asked if he could help him solve this matter, and the ducal house would protect his family for life. Wouldn't that be a good offer? Holding an empty chest, the alchemist replied that yes, but what exactly did he need to solve? Let them start by solving this urgent matter. The lights were on in Cassie's research lab. Joseph held her hand, saying that this was the worst case of mana deficiency syndrome he had ever seen. She would have died long ago if not for the exceptional strength of the beast race. Presenting the notes, the alchemist said that it could certainly be cured if they made the medicine using the method he showed. But the problem was getting the ingredients needed to make it. Aiden crossed his arms and said that they would get the ingredients from their house, and the man replied that it wasn't just ingredients. It was impossible to get them. Looking at the notes, he said that mana deficiency syndrome was a disease where the mana channels were clogged. According to this treatment method, they needed extreme fire attribute mana for it. Looking at the guy in surprise, he asked how they would get fire attribute mana. Cassie looked down when she heard that it could be obtained from things like a fire dragon's heart or a phoenix feather, but how to find such legendary creatures? The girl said that she thought it couldn't be helped, but she was grateful for the help. Aiden reached into his inner pocket and asked, Did they mean something like this? He held a burning feather in his finger and said that he had a phoenix feather. His comrades opened their mouths in shock, asking where he got it from. Where did he get something they had only heard of in legends? The guy remembered the flying bird and answered in dismay that the phoenix had dropped it. Joseph collected the feather, saying that this was enough. This was definitely possible. Let them give him 2 days. Cassie stood behind. She smiled. A tear rolled down over a fingers in a white glove knocked on the door, asking if the young master was here. Philip entered the room and answered that Duke Fried was looking for him. The tense guy trembled, thinking that this time he had disappeared without saying anything. Aiden stood in front of the table in Duke Fried's office. There was a book in front of him. He asked what he had heard. He had gone to the city of Markellen. The guy answered that yes, he had gone there on business. Sweat beads appeared on the boy's face. He apologized, saying that he should have informed him before leaving. And the man replied that he did not call him here to scold him. The boy's eyes widened in surprise, and he mentally asked why then, and out loud asked what was the reason for calling him. His father handed him an envelope with a smile, and said that they received an invitation to the imperial banquet in honor of the crown prince's upcoming birthday. He wanted him to go this time. The boy's mouth dropped in shock. He exclaimed he was going to the imperial banquet. Isn't Carl the one who attends such events representing their family? And thought that he still had so much to do. Fried smiled widely, saying that it was true, but he refused, saying that he had to deal with the knights. Besides, there were many people who wanted to see him. Letting go of his gaze, the boy sadly said that you are also busy, and then thought about it. Standing next to the table, he asked his father that it was the 450th imperial year, right? He replied that yes, he must attend this banquet no matter how unpleasant it was for him. Smiling widely, the boy replied that he would go. He smiled sweetly, saying that he had no choice. Since Carl was busy, he would go and think that this was just an appearance. Looking at his son, the Duke said that he saw that he made the right decision. Let him be careful on the trip. The crescent moon was shining in the sky. Aiden walked along the corridor. Putting his hands behind his back, he heard the Underlord's words that he would not go to such a place without a reason. What was the real reason for his sudden agreement to attend the Imperial Banquet? Aiden mentally replied that important events would happen at the Imperial Banquet this year. Aiden imagined a burning castle and thought that this was an attack by black magicians. In the center of all this was the Queen of Black Magicians. He imagined a blonde girl in a cloak and called her a silver witch, saying that he must definitely attract this woman to his side. The Underlord asked if he didn't despise black mages. Why was he trying to make an ally out of someone he hated? Looking thoughtfully ahead, the boy mentally answered that unlike the radical and heretical black mage group Chaos, she was the leader of the moderate faction Fire of Florence. When he finished her off in his past life, this time everything could end differently. Aiden remembered standing in front of the girl in the middle of the fire. The boy looked down. The Silver Witch called him with a smile and said that if they had met differently, they could have become very close. There was blood at the corner of her lips. Aiden heard that it was a pity she could not fix the corrupted black magic and could not restore Florence's will. A carriage and riders were riding through the forest. Looking out the carriage window, Aiden asked if they really needed such a large entourage to go to the Imperial Palace for the birthday banquet. Lo replied that the size of the entourage symbolized the family's power. It was inevitable for the sake of the Duke's reputation. Looking at the bored boy, he asked why they had to take a detour. Was there any special reason why we had to stop by this village, leaving behind a shortcut? Looking out the window, Aiden said that he simply wanted to take a more leisurely route. Recalling the conversation with the alchemist, the boy said that he wanted to get more of Joseph's first-class elixirs, but there was one problem. The alchemist said that in fact, even if he wanted to make top-class elixirs now, he couldn't. He imagined the creature and said that they needed tears which come from the spirits of the Theaden as ingredients for first-class elixirs, as he knows they are now endangered and it is difficult to find even traces of elves, let alone tears. He looked out the carriage window. Aiden thought that he had never seen them either, so he knew little, but he certainly knew. A smile appeared on Aiden's lips. He thought that he would take the gift for now. A dialogue was heard from the middle of the hills. Aiden told everyone to go. He needed to stop by somewhere. A comrade offered to help, and the boy replied that he would go alone, to which he agreed with a disappointed expression. His foot stepped on the grass. Aiden walked through the forest, hearing the voice of the Underlord asking if he was sure that there was someone to meet in these mountains. The boy replied that he did not say it was a person. He smiled mentally, answering that he was here. Even now he cannot understand what his master was thinking. In front of Aiden was a large stone heart. The spirit said that for some reason this heart-shaped stone looked very artificial. Aiden imagined a man giving a thumbs up, saying that it was a gift personally prepared for a student who would come someday, and said that his master had very peculiar tastes. Aiden walked up to the stone, hearing the Underlord's words that he wanted to say that this strange stone was the gift. He thought it was a very ordinary stone. Aiden replied that his master really liked to pack things. He took out a glow, telling the master that he would take it this time, too. A bright beam of attack cut the heart in half. The two halves fell apart. The demon asked, "Didn't he say that this was a gift from his master?" And the guy replied that it was just the outer layer. A passage opened behind the stone. The demon asked, "A dungeon? Is this supposed to be a gift?" Looking ahead, Aiden replied that he had always been an eccentric person. He often said nonsense like how the mercenary king's apprentice must learn through pain, or he only becomes stronger through the experience of near death. A light appeared. The boy continued that this was not just a dungeon. Monsters were walking inside. Aiden slung his sword over his shoulder, hearing Underlord's words that by chance he did not get along with his master in his past life, and replied that he said that he was an eccentric person. When he entered there in his past life without knowing anything, he thought that he wanted to kill him. His eyes glowed blue, and the boy said that in this life he could not be more grateful to him. In front of him was a figure with a staff surrounded by a purple glow. Monsters with glowing eyes were walking forward. The creature smiled widely, showing sharp teeth. Aiden watched intently upon hearing that it was a lich, a stupid creature created when a black mage turns himself into an undead, and replied that they were one of the most difficult opponents. If he didn't know how to deal with them, recalling how much trouble they had caused him in his past life. The lich's eyes glowed purple. He said that this was a foolish person who entered here without fear. He would turn him into an undead like the others. Aiden quickly rushed forward, leaving a bright trace. His eyes glowed blue. The guy thought that if he destroyed the lich, the rest of the undead he summoned would disappear. Plus, considering how many high-level liches he destroyed in his past life, this half-dead one was nothing. A bright beam crossed the enemy's body. He gritted his teeth, saying that to think that he would never see the revival of the kingdom of black magicians. The rest of the monsters began to crumble into ash. The guy noticed a pendant on the lich's neck and asked what kind of shiny thing it was. There was a round pendant on the chain. The Underlord replied that it was a gift from his master that he was talking about, and was told that no, he had never seen anything like it. The guy collected the decoration, saying that this too, the pattern seemed strangely familiar to him until they left it. Putting the pendant on his neck, Aiden, displeased, the assistant heard the words that he should also collect the lich's bone dust. The guy, wincing, looked down, hearing. Didn't he say that he was going to look for Ents? The lich's bone dust is what makes the Ents go crazy. Aiden sat down, thinking that he did not want to follow the words of this curse, but he also knew little about the Ents. If he told him to collect it for some strange purposes, then he better be ready. The Underlord said that he just trusted him. The guy collected the ashes in a bag and heard the question of where exactly this gift should be. To which he objected that a minute ago he was skeptical, and now he collects so much. He answered that it is useful to store useful things. Lamps burned on the walls of the stairs. Aiden walked through the dungeon and heard that there was a secret room in it, to which he confirmed, saying that no matter how eccentric his master was, he was not so crazy as to simply throw him into the dungeon with only one key. A bright mist was flying ahead. The demon said that throwing a lich at him was already crazy enough. With a smile, Aiden looked ahead and asked, did he also see this in his past life? In the center of the tree was a blue glow. The Underlord said, how could he forget? If not for that, he would never have lost their battle. There was a golden shield by the trunk of the tree. The boy thought that he had not seen this for a long time, the shield of the spirit of the banshee. He approached, slapping his hand, and thought that this was an item imbued with the spirit of a mad banshee. This madness darkened the user himself, so he had a hard time in his past life. The boy reached his finger towards the shield and thought that the second time was already nonsense. A bright beam appeared around his hand. Aiden thought that one of the reasons he liked this shield was that a bright glow stretched from the shield to his hand. It wrapped around his wrist like an ornament, and Aiden continued that it can be worn like a bracelet, unlike most equipment, and it can be taken out when needed, which is very convenient. A golden bracelet appeared on the guy's hand. He thought that maybe because it was a familiar object, it reminded him of the times when he was a dragon slayer king. He even missed this full of madness scream. Aiden turned his head, hearing that the student is no worse than the teacher. He is also crazy, and stopped him, saying that it is time to go. Well, there is someone. And out loud, the guy said that he knows that he is completely watching and wants to make a deal. Can he show himself? A figure materialized in the glow who said that he was waiting for him to call. Dear client, it seems he needs to make a deal. It was a rabbit in a suit with a hat, and said that he was a rabbit. A spirit merchant from a friendly spirit market. If he needed something, he should not call it. But a potion, a weapon, food. There is nothing that is not in their market. Aiden imagined creatures and hats, and thought that the spirit merchant was spirits with strong monetary desires. The spirit market was created when these merchant spirits gathered together. The central figure was the hat merchant. Aiden put his hands on his hips, thinking that usually when someone clears a dungeon, the market sends a spirit to exchange for side items from this dungeon. The rabbit sniffed with his red nose and asked, is he going to exchange the banshee shield on his hand? He can buy it for a good price. The spirit merchant was shocked when he heard that no, he would not betray him, and learned what kind of deal this was. Looking at him indifferently, Aiden said that he wanted to get some information. He wanted to know where the dwelling of the Ents was on this western continent. The rabbit grinned greedily, saying that so they wanted to buy information about the dwelling of the Ents. Rubbing his paws, he said that information about these dwellings was very expensive, even if it was the location of a small village. With a discount, it would cost 2,000 gold. Frowning at him, Aiden replied, "No, 4,000 gold." The rabbit beamed, exclaiming in surprise. Aiden looked at him with a smile. Hearing the words of the Underlord, who asked if he was crazy, why did he suddenly double the price? Did he owe something to this spirit from his past life? And replied that he was indebted to him. He was just doing what he was taught. There was a sly smile on the boy's lips when he heard the question of what exactly he had been taught. And he said that the ability to hide the spirits of merchants which his master had taught him. He proudly put his hands on his hips, mentally answering that he had eaten him in his past life. Let rabbits let him shine again in this life. And out loud, he asked to give him the location of the Ent's home and 4,000 gold. Crossing his paws, the rabbit asked discontentedly. He was not buying information for 4,000, but asking for 4,000 gold and information. Have they gone crazy because of monsters? With a sly smile, pointing his finger, the brunette said that no, he was offering in exchange. He wanted to sell him what was behind his back. The rabbit bulged his eyes at him, furiously, asking how a person like him could. Aiden smiled even wider, taking out his sword, and said that if he did not need it, let him say he could always destroy it. Aiden remembered standing next to the master in his past life and asked if he meant to say that he was going to sell this to the spirit merchants, and heard that it was exactly that. It was his secret money-making scheme that no one knew about. They were standing next to a shining tree, and he said that this was the core of the dungeon. Aiden opened his mouth and remarked that this thing was so useless that no one would take it even if it was given to them for free, but they wanted to get their hands on it. Putting his hand on his hip, the master replied that he didn't know why either. Anyway, when he conquered a dungeon, everything in it became his. This core too, so he could sell it. Aiden looked at him uncertainly and said if they didn't buy it. Smiling at the core of the dungeon, the guy remembered the advice to just destroy it and asked what he would do in that case. The rabbit's face wrinkled in horror. Rabbits floating above looked at the guy who rushed him and wondered how this man even knew about dungeon cores. Everyone else just abandoned them because they didn't know. Looking down tensely, the rabbit thought that if he told his elders that he bought a dungeon core with money, he wondered how many insults they would throw at him. But if he didn't return it, they would definitely fire him. Aiden reached out saying that fine, he would destroy it. And the rabbit stopped him. With tears in his eyes, he exclaimed that he would buy it. And the guy noted what he should have said earlier. The Underlord remarked that he now wondered where he would extort this money from next. There were many coins in the bag. Holding it, Aiden smiled and said that these platinum coins were definitely worth 4,000 gold. It was a good deal. He waved his hand as he left and suggested that they meet sometime. The rabbit exclaimed angrily that he hoped they would never meet again. A sinister smile appeared on his face, thinking that this impudent fellow would not get away with deceiving the spirit merchant. Rabbits looked ahead predatorily, suggesting that Aiden tried to find the village of the Ents. No one had ever returned from there. With a wide, satisfied smile, Aiden carried a bag of coins. Lo was waiting for him. Leaning against the carriage, he looked away, wondering that half a day had passed since the young master left. Should he go and look for him? Suddenly, he noticed the satisfied hero walking towards him. Lo closed his eyes, exclaiming that he was worried because he had been gone for a long time, and the boy told him to stop. He remembered an angry Lo and thought that sometimes he wished that he would treat him like he used to. It was so disturbing that he could not get used to it. Aiden turned around with displeasure and exclaimed, "Have they rested? Let's go to the imperial capital immediately." The crescent moon was shining in the sky above the dungeon that night when the banshee spirit went into the dungeon. The man came up saying that he had finally found it. It was the Silver Witch who came in and asked why no one was here. "Just don't tell her." She opened her mouth and breathed heavily, and then she knelt down touching the floor and said that it had disappeared. The girl looked down in surprise saying that it should have been right here. The next day, the bright sun was shining on the castle in the imperial capital. A carriage was driving along the road. Then it stopped. Aiden, wearing an expensive suit, got out of the carriage. The man bowed in greeting and said that he would take him to the guest room in the imperial palace where he would be staying during his visit. The man looked at Aiden tensely, thinking that they were expecting young Master Carl to come, but he had come instead. If he was notorious even in the imperial capital, then he was not just a fool. The man grimaced in displeasure, thinking that they should not offend him. Under the clear sky was a white castle. Aiden fell onto the bed in his room and said that even the beds in the guest rooms of the imperial palace were different. He looked up, thinking that tonight the black magicians would cause chaos. Last time many people were injured and killed. The Underlord asked why he didn't go and warn them. The boy smiled slightly, saying that this was a good opportunity. He could not let it go so easily. In the evening the lights were shining in the windows of the palace. The guy heard the question. He wants to say that he doesn't care if people die or get hurt, and said that in his past life he was a hero who saved the world. He has a plan. People in smart clothes stood in the hall. Their conversations and small talk could be heard. The guy was wearing a blue suit. People turned around in surprise, looking at him. The man pursed his lips. Aiden walked among the crowd, which was discussing that this is the same scoundrel prince someone heard. He caught a troll. He probably stole someone's achievement. Aiden looked ahead, imagining angry people discussing him, and thought that he had not been treated like this for a long time. He thinks people are the same, be they mercenaries or nobles. He walked forward under the gaze, thinking that he had no business with others. There are 3 people he needs to meet. One of the guests drank from a glass. He smiled, saying that the alcohol in the imperial palace tasted better. If only they could import such alcohol to their magic tower. Aiden walked up to the magician Gustav with a smile, and said that it was an honor to meet him. The man with the glass asked in surprise if he knew him. He was the chief magician of Anguis, the city-state of magicians. Aiden waved his hand and said that of course he was a magician from Anguis, the country of the magic tower. If we talk about him, he was one of the best. The man turned away, saying that if he was trying to gain favor with the magic tower, he had come to the wrong place. He was not on good terms with the best endeavors of the country of the magic tower. The guy smiled, saying that he had read the book he wrote, The Possibilities of Magic Engineering, and found it interesting. Gustav looked at him in surprise. Turning around, he asked again, did he read the book and find it interesting? Aiden replied that he couldn't help but be interested in the presentation of a new direction that he had never seen before. A palm touched his shoulder. With a wide, satisfied smile, Gustav said that he recognized the greatness of magical engineering. Unlike the old men from the country of the magic tower, he had excellent insight. Aiden remembered how he slept over the book and said that he had never seen such a useful and excellent field of knowledge, and thought to himself that he would have said so if he hadn't fallen asleep every time he tried to read this book. He hadn't even turned the first page once. The magician standing next to him laughed, saying that in fact if you look from the outside, if you create a person as a machine, you can find unimaginable perfection. If magical engineering becomes practical and the output increases several times, if you use it in battle, as written on page 97, after trying it out, the future will change. Blood flowed from Aiden's ears. The Underlord asked to silence the guy who advised him to pretend he had no heirs. Gustav beamed happily, and the demon asked why they needed someone obsessed with magical engineering, which is not even magic. The guy presented a ball surrounded by rings and said that magical engineering may be rejected and considered useless now, but later it will become an indispensable technology for everyone. The guy with bleeding ears listened to the satisfied speeches while the Underlord said that Gustav must be quite a famous person and confirmed that he was famous. He imagined a man next to a burning building and explained that he was the cause of an unprecedented grand event in history. Gustav was called the crazy terrorist from the magic tower. The demon clarified. A terrorist? He did not become famous for magical engineering. The guy imagined a robot on fire that demanded recognition of the greatness of magic engineering and explained that he would probably have an accident during an experiment soon. He would have to be sealed and he himself would be banished from the country of the magic tower. Then he would attack it with a weapon created by himself. Remembering the fire in the tower, Aiden said that this is how this man almost destroyed the country of the magic tower. He imagined a girl with a staff and said that of course he was stopped because the country of the magic tower had a great magician Shora. Blood flowed from the ears of the smiling guy. He mentally said that in any case, thanks to that record when he almost destroyed the country of the Magic Tower, magic engineering received recognition. It's amazing, right? The magician with a glass continued to say something to Aiden. Gustav smiled, saying that this was the first time he had such a deep conversation about magic engineering. I wonder if he got too excited and said too much. Aiden replied that not at all. It was a great conversation that broadened his horizons. There were already bags under his eyes, but he said that he wanted to talk more the next time they met. The man opened his mouth and called out to him. Aiden turned to the angry boy in surprise. He thought the face seemed familiar, but he couldn't place it. The boy angrily pointed his finger, shouting that he was a thief who dared to steal their family heirloom. He would not forgive him. Aiden asked in confusion, "Who was he?" Aiden scratched himself awkwardly and heard the question. Surely something happened to him and young Master Tyan, and replied that no, he was seeing him for the first time. The boy's face had a puzzled expression. He thought Cetus now that he thought about it, this man. He imagined the man standing behind him and thought it was no wonder he seemed familiar. It was Tyan, Cetus' eldest son. Aiden smiled, telling the young master that he was glad to meet him. He had been wondering where he had seen him before, and now he realized that he looked a lot like his father. Tyan angrily rushed towards him, shouting to shut up. How dare he deceive his father and steal their family heirloom? The others present whispered, "He stole the heirloom." There was a black sword on the boy's belt, and they asked, "Wasn't that it?" One of the men gritted his teeth, asking, "What do you mean he didn't defeat the troll himself?" Aiden held out his palms, awkwardly, saying that it seemed like some kind of misunderstanding. He chose him fairly in a bet. The furious boy's eyes lit up red. He asked, "Fair in a bet?" He had heard a lot about him acting strange lately. Did he really think he would believe that someone like him could withstand his father's onslaught and win the bet? Surrounded by fire, Aiden continued to smile, mentally, repeating the caustic words, and said out loud that he was overdoing it. The demon said that it was amazing. He knew what patience was, to which the boy mentally asked, did he mean to say that he should hit him here and now? The boys looked at each other angrily, and he asked again, was he overdoing it? Then why didn't he prove that this was not a scam? Frowning, he said that if he won the duel against him, he would kneel and humble himself. But if he lost, he would return the relic and apologize on his knees. Aiden smiled, thinking why it seemed to him that he was becoming more and more rude anyway. He was the same as his father and asked out loud a duel at the Crown Prince's birthday banquet if he found out about this. A man in white clothes walked towards them, saying that it was funny, a duel at a feast in honor of his birthday. The boys turned to look at him. The prince, surrounded by radiance, walked towards them. The words of the announcement of the entrance of the small son of the empire, the respected Crown Prince Mars, were heard. The people bowed. The prince walked straight towards the guys. Bowing his head, an unhappy Tyan greeted the small son of the empire and thought to himself how inopportune it was. Mars smiled, saying that he heard an interesting conversation, to which the boy apologized, saying that they would accept any punishment for causing trouble. Aiden frowned angrily, mentally ordering to thank the Crown Prince for saving him and apologizing out loud. Continuing to smile, the blonde ordered them to raise their heads and address them. With a sweet smile, the prince said that he would like to see their duel. Will they fight here? The boys looked at him in complete shock. Mars spread his hands, saying that Tyan was famous for his exceptional fighting skills, and Aiden had recently made a lot of noise with his exploit. If the two of them could show off their skills, it would be the best birthday present he could wish for. Aiden looked down thoughtfully, thinking that this was how Mars had been famous in his previous life, too. He imagined the boy with a sly smile watching the fight and thought that he was considered the best candidate after the emperor. But he had one flaw. He was a battle maniac. He could not refuse the Crown Prince's offer. What should he do? The boy smiled and replied that he would gladly, as His Highness commanded. Smiling, he imagined his father saying that he must be a genius destined to surpass him, and thought that his father, who had never acknowledged him, acknowledged this boy. Father. He doesn't know what trick he used, but he will expose him, return their relic, and earn his recognition. Glancing sideways at the trembling Aiden, he wondered where his confidence was from a moment ago, and now he was shaking like a coward. He had disgraced the family with his actions. This would serve as a lesson to him. Aiden clenched his fist, hearing the Underlord ask if he was okay. Embarrassedly looking away, the boy said that he didn't like to fight. But since the Crown Prince ordered it, how could he refuse? He thought he sympathized with the Margrave, but he had no choice but to accept this duel. He would use this chance to teach him good manners. The Underlord noted that he really didn't look healthy. He was fighting a child. Was he even a human? The opponents stood opposite each other with swords, smiling contentedly. Mars said that for safety reasons, the use of sword aura and artifacts is prohibited. He is looking forward to what kind of fight they both will show. Tyan says that he promises a private duel. With a sly smile, he said that he will prove right here that all the rumors about him are nonsense. Aiden in response feigned yawning and asked if they could begin. The enraged opponent immediately rushed towards him, saying that the problem was in his trap. He swung his sword, thinking that this amateur defeated his father. This is ridiculous. He apologizes to the Crown Prince, but this will end quickly and imperceptibly. A sword flew into the shocked guy's forehead. The Crown Prince smiled. One of the guys opened his mouth and asked, "Tyan lost so easily." Aiden held the sword and said that he was surprised and slipped. He accidentally happened to be nearby. He was lucky. He smiled sweetly, saying that it was hard to judge something based on the coincidence of the other mistakes on both sides. This round should be declared null and void. The prince sitting in the chair said that was very good. They would declare it null and void. Both of them should concentrate more. Tyan with a bruise on his forehead agreed and thought that he had let his guard down, even if it was a group like him. After all, a knight was a knight. He should be able to wield the sword. He remembered ridiculously and thought that it was that disgusting expression on his face. Clutching the wooden sword, the red-haired one said that this time he would give it his all. Grimacing, the boy mimicked him and urged him to attack. The veins on Tyan's face bulged with rage. He angrily thought that he hoped that he would fall for his taunts. He could fool him once, but never twice. His hands gripped the hilt tightly. Aiden dodged the swift swings. Returning, Aiden mused that as befits the son of a Margrave. His sword was honest and truthful, just like himself. The boy blocked the blow with his sword and said that compared to his father, his sword seemed too light. The opponent gritted his teeth and asked again. Looking at him calmly, Aiden replied that the Margrave's sword was heavy and precise, but his sword now looked as if it was simply imitating his sword. Tyan flushed with rage and asked again. Aiden frowned at him, saying that that was his sword, the one with which he fought his father, which he was so curious about. Aiden quickly rushed towards the opponent, asking permission to show it to him. The red-haired man held the sword out in front of him, thinking that it was fast, not that he could not block it. The sword was approaching his face. He thought that his father was defeated by such a sword. Ridiculous. The boy was surprised to see how the enemy's sword curved around him. The blow hit him in the face. Blood flowed from the boy's nose. He was surprised to think that he was definitely blocked. Aiden frowned at him, and heard Underlord's words that he thought he would be easier because of his connection with the Margrave. But it seemed that he took it more seriously than he expected and replied that such a stubborn knight like him would not stop until he was knocked out. If he did not make him lose all knowledge, you can bet he will attack him until he dies. The boy staggered, falling backwards, and thought that he could not cope with such unheard of swordsmanship. His foot hit the stripes with a cry that it was impossible. Aiden smiled, mentally marveling at how he had endured this. The opponent raised his sword back, shouting that he was Tyan, the eldest son destined to lead the Cetus family. With a swift movement, Aiden knocked the sword out of his hands, thinking of the mercenary's royal skill. The opponent staggered and began to fall while the boy thought that he was a knight destroyer. The blonde boy caught Tyan, saying that it seemed like his friend had been causing trouble in his absence. Aiden turned around, saying that it was okay. He was already feeling a little awkward and thought this man was familiar, and well, at least now he wouldn't have to search so hard. He was one of the three he came to see, supporting his friend. The boy said that he was glad to meet young Master Aiden. The blonde man had golden armor on his body. He was the younger brother of the betrayer knight Sylvetta. With a slight smile, Aiden introduced himself as Deir. On the wall hung a yellow crest, a sword guarding the northern continent, the Archduchy of Sires, a famous strongest knightly family. It is said that there is no one who inherited this blood but did not become a sword master. They are famous for choosing their lords solely by their fighting skills. Aiden drank champagne thinking that if he were reborn in this family he would already be a sword master. He looked at Deir who was talking with the others and thought that such a person is called a genius. He is born once every 100 years in such a family. Underlord said that he has heard of sires several times, but this was the first time for Deir. Behind Aiden, who was smiling, there were people admiring him. The demon said that if they needed to meet him now wasn't the best time to approach. He replied that the best time would come. He glanced back with displeasure, wondering what was that stare he felt from behind. The boy turned around and was shocked by the admiring people who wanted to meet him and talk to him. The boy opened his mouth in bewilderment when he heard everyone calling him. Later, he stood leaning on the balcony railing and thought that they wouldn't follow him here. Aiden exhaled when he heard the Underlord ask if he was disgusted by these nobles. Just moments ago, they looked down on him and answered that people are all the same. Thoughtfully looking into the distance, the boy thought that this is how people are. They cling to a person when they are needed and throw them away when they have exhausted their usefulness. You can't trust him too much. After all, he is also a person. The demon with black wings said that he trusts him. Aiden was embarrassed, saying that you are unexpectedly touching. The boy raised his fist when he heard that he looked more like a troll than a person, so he trusts him 100% and mentally promised to reserve 100 bottles of St. Basil for him when they returned. A girl appeared behind him and asked, "This was the swordsmanship of the mercenary king, wasn't it?" Turning around tensely, the guy thought she recognized his master swordsmanship. Moreover, this energy. Aiden smiled contentedly, thinking that as expected, she came by herself, the last person he needed to see. The girl approached the fence, and Aiden asked if she had seen this skill before, and received the answer that she had not seen it, but had heard of it. Smiling, looking into the distance, the girl said that the skill of the mercenary king could make any defense useless. If he were a knight, he would undoubtedly deserve a great honor. Aiden imagined his master who was showing him the symbol of the coin and thought he was a knight. He would have told him to give that damn part to the dogs if it didn't bring him money. But out loud he said that he probably would have done that. Leaning on the railing, he asked if this banquet wasn't too boring. He hated these formal events. The boy stood next to the girl on the balcony and thought that no matter how much she changed her appearance, how could he forget about her presence after hundreds of fights with her? With a slight smile, the boy asked, "Isn't that so?" A shadow fell on the girl's face when she heard him call her Nisida. The girl's appearance and clothes changed. She said that he already knew. Then she would ask him. There was a black sword on the boy's hip and she asked how he awakened it. With a smile, Aiden replied that he had a friend help him and thought that she would come if she saw Beelzebub on him. A purple haze appeared around Nisida. She said that he was trying to dodge, and she would ask again. Aiden's gaze became shocked. The girl seemed to be holding him in her palm and asking where this demonic energy flowing from his body came from. Aiden gritted his teeth thinking that as expected such a huge murderous aura. If this is demonic energy coming from his body then it must be a curse. Can she feel it? The guy trembled and thought that they would discuss this later. Although in their past lives they were equal to each other. This time they need to try differently and said out loud that he is on her side. Looking forward, the girl asked on her side as if he knew about her. The guy smirked and said that she was the leader of the moderate faction of the Black Mages Fire of Florence. A silver witch, the representative of the last line of the Black Mage Kingdom, the head of the intelligence organization White Moon. Is that enough? Nisida turned around in surprise after hearing this. Gritting her teeth in dissatisfaction, she asked. He knows so much. But how? Aiden thought that the murderous aura had weakened and said that they have a lot of time and something will start soon. Looking at him, the girl demanded that he stop evading an answer, but she was interrupted by something. A shining pink seal appeared in the space in front of the castle. Looking down in confusion, Nisida asked, "Is this black magic for summoning the undead?" She did not expect them to escalate the situation so much. Aiden replied that these guys always follow the same obvious pattern as always. Raising a finger with a smile, he continued that this black magic will not end until its summoner dies. It seems she has many questions for him, but they will deal with this first. With a sweet smile, the guy asked. She is here to capture the Black Magician legal team, right? Looking at him tensely, the girl thought that he even knew that she was here to capture them. Who is this guy? Turning away, she replied that they will continue their conversation later and disappeared, leaving behind a pink hay. Leaning on the balcony railing, Aiden decided to let her handle this. For now, they need to deal with this side. Monsters began to appear from the pink glow. They ran into the open doors inside the banquet hall. The knights shouted that they cannot let the undead in. The guy pulled out his sword. A powerful wave of energy threw the undead back. Tyan swung his sword, leaving a bright trace. Frowning, he shouted, "Don't be afraid. It's just a weak undead." Aiden stood on the railing hearing the Underlord's question that even this junior had reached the stage of advanced sword aura and replied that at this age he had already reached the stage of sword aura, which means he is very strong. He just chose the wrong opponent. He must always feel like he is losing because of his friend. The huge monster towered over the knights. One of them asked this troll, "When will the Marcus reinforcements arrive?" The blonde guy ran past Tyan, who thought it was dangerous he would have to wait for Marcus reinforcements. The guy was surprised. Surrounded by bright rays, Deir attacked the monster. Aiden looked at this in surprise, hearing the demon's words. This guy seems to be one step away from becoming a sword master, and replied that he is right. He is at the stage before the master, a half-master. Tyan was holding the sword with both hands, and the boy thought that he was strong enough, but that his closest friend and rival Deir was his terrible bad luck. Aiden stood with his sword over his shoulder, and heard the demon ask why he was not helping him, just messing around, and replied that they could handle it themselves. Watching what was happening below, he added that he needed to confirm something. The knight had silver armor on his body. Deir swung his sword in a circle, and his comrades said that he felt incredibly dense demonic energy from somewhere. The knight in armor walked forward. His eyes glowed ominously red. "He is called Deir." The monster bowed his head. He took a step. He took off, leaving a bright trail behind him. Deir turned around tensely. The enemy was attacking him, swinging his sword. A bright flash of attack. Deir tensely clutched the weapon. Aiden appeared in front of him and blocked the strike with a golden shield. He furrowed his brows, thinking that the one who ruined this banquet had finally appeared. The monster's eyes glowed red. He thought that it was the strongest of the undead, the Death Knight. Naturally, gritting his teeth in tension, Aiden thought that he thought something was wrong. And as expected, even if it was the strongest undead, Deir should be able to handle it. He always wondered why he lost in his past life. The monster gritted his teeth, and the boy thought that it was strengthened by dark magic and had power that surpassed that of a half-master. He wouldn't have been able to block it if it weren't for the Banshee Spirit Shield. Now he understands why Deir lost. The Death Knight bared his teeth and called out to Deir again. Aiden looked at him in surprise, mentally asking what he said. A powerful attack threw him back, and the monster said that it did not need other bugs. Aiden held the shield thinking that this was what it was. He should have realized from the beginning that something was wrong. The knight stood in front of the roaring monsters. Aiden thought that he should have noticed that the undead did not move to attack, but to separate Deir from the rest of the soldiers. Someone's hand reached out to the blonde. The guy thought that everything here was planned to kill him.